Ring Video Doorbell. Available at ring.com and selected retailers.
Send message to Elise. Salut. Sorry, I'm running late. Just in the car now. Send. I forgot the cake. Send. Actually, great news. SatNav has found a new route. See you in 10.
Message on the move in the Citroën C1 and stay connected. Experience Citroën C1. Available from £149 per month with initial rental of £149.
Citroën.
Please drive responsibly. Citroën UK Limited is a credit broker, not a lender. Personal lease. You will not own the vehicle. Offer on fill VTI 725 speed manual. 6,000 miles per annum. Guarantee may be required. Terms, eligibility criteria and return conditions apply. PSA Finance UK Limited.
Good morning. This is your Southern service to London, Victoria. Join in our onboard quiz. Here's our next clue. What sea sounds like a handheld party food but keeps you dry and protected from the rain? Not canapes, canopies.
At Southern Railway, we're investing over £7 million into making improvements for you, like canopies, cycle parking and new platform lighting across more of our stations. Find out more and book your tickets at southernrailway.com. Southern Railway, we're with you.
Connecting decision makers to a network of news and financial information 24 hours a day. Powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. This is Bloomberg Radio. Now, a global news update.
Hundreds of people began disembarking the quarantined Diamond Princess cruise ship off Japan this morning with at least 540 cases of coronavirus among its passengers and crew. It will take several days to get all the people off the ship. This as the death toll in China has now passed 2,000. Democratic presidential candidate Mike Bloomberg will make his first debate appearance tonight in Las Vegas. With his rising poll numbers, Bloomberg can probably expect attacks from his rivals, as Senator Bernie Sanders last night tried out this line characterizing Bloomberg's rationale.
I'm worth $60 billion. I have more wealth than the bottom 125 million Americans. I'll buy the presidency. That offends me very much.
Former Illinois Governor Rod Blagojevich is already back home in Chicago after his sentence for political corruption was commuted by President Trump. The now silver-haired Blagojevich arrived at O'Hare Airport hours after he left the federal prison south of Denver. Stock futures showing modest gains this morning. I'm Michael Toscano.
Why all the top-tier experts? Because business is not a magic trick.
Give us a sense of the economic backdrop.
Bloomberg Markets.
Which financial records are these?
Weekday mornings at 10 Eastern on Bloomberg Radio. Bloomberg, the world is listening. Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm Karen Moscow, and futures are higher this morning. We go to the First Word breaking news desk for today's morning call, and here's Bill Maloney. Good morning, Bill.
And good morning, Karen. Like you said, U.S. futures trading in the green right now, with Dow futures up 61 points, S&P's gained 7, while Nasdaq futures rise by 29. The U.S. 10-year yield at 1.55%, gold trading higher by 8, and Shanghai fell 0.3% overnight. While European markets are also trading higher, led by gains in Italy and Spain. Back in the U.S. on the economic front at 8:30, the producer price index, as well as housing starts, and at 2 o'clock, the minutes from the FOMC. Regarding earnings this morning, look for Analog Devices to report around 8 a.m. And in deal news, Coty's beauty unit, which may fetch $8 billion, is said to draw buyout interest. In other news, Tesla's up 8% in the pre-market as Piper raised its target to a street high $9.28 a share. And wrapping things up, Nvidia raised outperform at Bernstein. That price target a street high of $360. Live from the First Breaking News Desk, I'm Bill Maloney. Karen?
All right, Bill, thank you. And to hear live breaking news over your Bloomberg, type squawk on your terminal, SQUAWK. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Now with more on what's going on around the world, here's Michael Barr. Michael.
Thank you very much, Karen. Attorney General William Barr has told people close to him he is considering quitting his post after President Donald Trump wouldn't heed his warning to stop tweeting about Justice Department cases. That's according to a person familiar with the matter. The coronavirus continues to spread around the globe. Bloomberg's John Tucker has more in this live report.
Michael, China's death toll from the outbreak went past 2,000. Hong Kong had a second fatality from the coronavirus. The number of people infected worldwide has exceeded 75,000. And a growing number of China's private companies have cut wages, delayed paychecks, or stopped paying staff completely, saying that the economic toll of the coronavirus has left them unable to cover their labor expenses. John Tucker, Bloomberg Daybreak. Michael.
Thank you very much, John. In the NHL, the Devils lost. Finally, from daybreak on the Bloomberg, the Tesla vehicle was tricked into speeding when researchers put a strip of electrical tape horizontally across the middle of the 3 on a 35-mile-an-hour speed limit sign. Now, according to research by McAfee, the change caused the vehicle to read the limit as 85, and its cruise control system automatically accelerated. Nathan, the driver behind the wheel of the experiment, was able to slow the car down.
Well, what, by removing the tape? Is that all it took?
No, if he did it while it's moving, that's
not a good idea.
Well, apparently, I didn't even know they had that feature where they could read a sign. So.
Yeah, well, self-driving, it's got to eventually, right?
Well, my Vega doesn't have that. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg, Nathan.
You can keep anything running. Thank you, Michael. We are live from the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers Studios, where it is 6:50 on Wall Street, and it's now time to check what's going on in D.C. One of the top stories Michael Barr mentioned, Attorney General William Barr telling associates he could resign over President Trump's tweets. A wave of pardons and commutations from the president, including from Michael Milken and Rod Blagojevich, and the president continuing his West Coast swing today with events in California and Arizona, holding a re-election rally there. Meanwhile, of course, the Democrats who hope to face the president this fall are also out west for their latest debate tonight in Las Vegas. For more, we're joined by Wendy Schiller, chair of the Political Science Department at Brown University. Always good to talk with you, Wendy. And of course, the big story, the big focus of attention at this debate is the debut of Michael Bloomberg. How big an impact could his introduction beyond the ads make in this race, Wendy?
Well, I think there's extra curiosity tonight for this debate amongst, independents, moderates, Republicans, Democrats. Everybody wants to see how he'll do on the debate stage. And it's a big night for him. I mean, I don't think he has to win the debate. I don't think that he has to, knock it out of the park. But he can't mess up. He can't say anything that even harkens back to some of the things that have been quoted, that he's been, said in the past. Bernie Sanders is bringing it up. Trump is starting to make some noise about that. So he's just got to reset the button and say, forget about, what we've done in the past. I'm going to present a strong campaign and let's move to the future. If he can keep the theme on the future in the debate, I think that he does okay. I think he walks out of it unwounded. But they're going to be going after him, particularly Bernie, who's already in comments really started to go after Bloomberg in a huge way personally. And then also running ads, just this week he's got a new ad about millionaires, right? We don't want billionaires in the White House. So Bernie's going on strong. I don't think he's going to take anything for granted. I think he's going to go head on against Bloomberg. And then we got to see if Biden can even get airtime.
It's interesting that you term this as Michael Bloomberg needing to reset the button, given that this is his debut on the debate stage. Now, I know he's been putting out, wide national message with campaign ads, but how does Michael Bloomberg need to reset the button when he's making a debut here, at least on its face?
Well, because he's got to reintroduce himself to constituencies that are core to the Democratic Party, particularly African Americans. And there's some signs that there's a lot of African American voters all over the country that are not as, sort of upset or angry about stop and frisk as those that might be, from New York or living on the East Coast, more familiar with the policy. So he's got a chance to sort of explain that and move forward if he can. It's a very important constituency, not necessarily in Las Vegas, but certainly in South Carolina and certainly in some of the Super Tuesday states. So that's a reset. And then with women, some recent remarks have come out. Maybe they were said a long time ago. Maybe they're out of context. And I think he's got a little work to do there, too. So he's going to have two other women, on the debate stage with him. So when I say reset, I mean sort of figure out a way to diffuse the power of some of these past remarks that his opponents are bringing up, and that will not go away anytime soon.
You say Michael Bloomberg himself doesn't need to win this debate tonight. Do other candidates outside Bernie Sanders, who is obviously holding this strong front-runner lead in national polls, do they need to win tonight, or is there still room for them to run after Nevada?
Well, I think Elizabeth Warren and Joe Biden are really in not exactly similar places, but certainly in terms of relevance and media coverage and buzz and discussion. Elizabeth Warren is fading super fast. And unless something really dramatic happens in Las Vegas and South Carolina, I think it's going to be a very tough road for her. Biden, this is a union state. In other words, the unions really are very strong in the Democratic Party in Nevada, and Biden's, best friends are the unions. So he's got to come out swinging. He's got to look really good, and he's got to remind the union voters that he's their champion and that he's the only one on the stage that's really got that kind of record. And if he can do that and he can come out of Nevada big, it's unclear that he can, then he has momentum going to South Carolina, where she's expected to do better, mostly with African-American voters. And that's where I bring Bloomberg in. As Bloomberg gets better and stronger, theoretically, the question is, can he take away and siphon off votes from people that might be in the same kind of category as he is amongst the Democratic Party voters? So anyone who's not for Sanders and Warren, they're choosing amongst a bunch of other people. That's why it's so important for Biden tonight. And it's really important to have a good showing in Nevada. If that doesn't happen for him, I think he too also faces a very tough climb.
Obviously, a lot of attention is on Michael Bloomberg tonight. Is it important, though, for some of the other candidates to focus attention on Bernie Sanders as the front runner, as someone who's putting out this strong, progressive message?
Yes and no. So just like Trump in 2016, Bernie's got a bit of a ceiling in the Democratic Party, it looks like. So he's 36, maybe 40% of the party. And he's, basically Buttigieg beat him in Iowa, or they're, tied for delegates. So Bernie technically isn't really as far out in front as people think. And the problem for Buttigieg, Klobuchar is that Bloomberg's on the stage. So you're speaking out of the moderate voter. They're splitting the moderate vote anyway, but the moderate vote is bigger than right now the core for Sanders. So if you're Klobuchar and you're Buttigieg, you've got to figure out a way to pivot against Bloomberg. They're the younger alternative. They're the more experienced alternative in terms of government. That's not true for Buttigieg, but Klobuchar can try to make that case at the national level. And then you can pivot back to Sanders. But right now, it's that big mass of people that are not Sanders supporters that they have to go after.
As this debate is happening tonight, President Trump is going to be holding a campaign rally in Arizona. What to make of that? Arizona used to be a pretty solidly red state.
Nathan, that is a terrific point to make, and we should all be watching Arizona as we move forward in 2020. Very contested Senate race that's expected. Mark Kelly's expected to be the Democratic nominee. The primary's not for a while, but nonetheless, against Martha McSally. A lot of people think Arizona could go blue in 2020 at the national level. Maybe not quite yet, but certainly very competitive. Republicans are going to have to spend money there the way that they never had before. That's why he's going, because the signs are that Arizona is shifting, and Arizona has the same or just about the same electoral votes as Wisconsin. So it really changes the game nationally if Arizona moves, because then you start to see a big shift in a lot of the Southwest and the West towards the Democrats. So let's keep an eye on Arizona.
And we will be keeping an eye on it, as well as tonight's 9th Democratic presidential debate. Wendy Schiller, chair of the Political Science Department at Brown University, thanks as always for your insights. And again, we should mention as a disclaimer that Michael Bloomberg is running for the Democratic presidential nomination. He is the founder and majority owner of Bloomberg LP, the parent company of Bloomberg Radio. If you're a Bloomberg Terminal customer, you can follow all the latest on the presidential race, ELEC Go, on the Bloomberg Terminal. Karen?
All right, Nathan, thank you. And we continue to watch shares of Groupon this morning. They're down more than 24.5% in the pre-market. This is after earnings missed estimates, and the company announced plans to stop selling goods. We also heard from Dish Network this morning. It exceeded analyst estimates for sales and profit. That boosted confidence that the company can offset satellite TV subscriber losses with gains in Sling TV streaming customers as it gears up for entry into the wireless service business. Futures on the rise this morning. S&P futures up 8.5 points. Dow futures up 78. NASDAQ futures up 36. And the 10-year Treasury up 2/30 seconds. Yield 1.55%. Bloomberg Surveillance straight ahead with Tom Keene, Jonathan Farrow, and Lisa Abramowitz. For Nathan Hager, I'm Karen Moscow. This is Bloomberg.
Hey, have you heard? The Mayor of London has launched his latest van scrappage scheme to help tackle London's toxic air. Small businesses or sole traders like me with a polluting van could now get £7,000, which you could use to trade up to a Euro 6 vehicle. And you could get an extra £2,500 towards running costs if you go electric. The scheme is now even easier to qualify for, and it's open to any businesses with up to 50 employees, like mine. So, I'm going to search TfL scrappage to see if I'm eligible and apply. You should do the same. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
Had the same job for the last 15 years? Working with the same people, in the same office, drinking tea from the same comedy mug, eating the same crayfish and rocket sandwich every lunchtime, using the same business jargon, and climbing the same greasy pole? What does that even mean? Then maybe it's time to switch it up, starting with the all-new Vauxhall Corsa. With its bold styling and up to 70 miles per gallon. To switch it up, visit your local Vauxhall dealership or search New Corsa. Official WLTP test figures for comparison purposes only. Real-world figures may vary.
Wouldn't it be nice to keep things you normally lose? Your favourite scarf, your train of thought, or your mobile data. Because with most other networks, you get to the end of the month and your data is, well, never to be seen again. But unlike anyone else, with Sky Mobile, you can roll and keep all your unused data for up to 3 years. Sky Mobile. Hello, possible.
Full terms and conditions at sky.com/mobile.
Can you make a call given the data?
Which segments of Alphabet's business are most likely to come under scrutiny?
Get all the pieces.
They're getting mixed signals from governments.
He's failed to gain traction.
Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business, Radio.com, and iHeartRadio apps, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening. From the financial capital of the world, 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio. This is Bloomberg Surveillance Economics.
The Federal Reserve's independence is crucial.
Central banks should be prepared and not presumptuous.
Finance.
In order to grow, you need to innovate.
Global money doesn't like uncertainty.
Investment.
I think the issue in the market is really more about the possibility of a recession in the next couple of years.
I do think we need to get back to where we have always been, the American dream.
Bloomberg Surveillance with Tom Keene and Jonathan Farrow on Bloomberg Radio.
From New York City for our audience worldwide, good morning, good morning. This is Bloomberg Surveillance. Coming up on the program, stocks bouncing back as China molds more economic support, investors looking for details on the Fed's next move in the latest minutes, and frontrunner Senator Sanders preparing to take the stage in Nevada. From the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers Studio, hello Wednesday. Here is your Wednesday morning price action. Equity futures positive, 8 points on the S&P 500, up by 0.24%. In the bond market, the shape of things for treasuries unchanged. Yields on a 10-year 155, on a 30-year yield 2%. And in foreign exchange, the euro still with a 107 handle, Tom Keene, just south of 108.
Really nuanced and triangulate. Here's what the pros do, folks. They triangulate three currency pairs. So you got euro, dollar, dollar, yen. And then, John, you've got euro, yen, where you take out the dollar. And what's different today with the new dollar strength, and we've broken out on DXY to new dollar strength, is the euro, as you say, still weaker, but all of a sudden the yen is out weakening the euro. Maybe it has to do with the headlines off that Diamond Princess boat in Japan, but there it is, yen weaker.
I'll throw the gold price into the mix as well here, guys. 1608 spot 91. Gold advancing, Lisa, by 0.5%.
Yeah, new highs post 2013, really raising a question of whether it's sending a conflicting message, frankly, from what we're seeing in the strength, the ongoing strength in equities. I also have to wonder, and again, we were talking about this yesterday, but again, it comes down to temporary. And this question of the longer that private Chinese companies don't pay their workers because they're furloughing, the longer this goes on, consumption declines, demand and supply, both contracting. When does this become more permanent?
Well, I said this to Selena Wang, who was in Beijing half an hour ago, John, is all of a sudden it's Marchish. I mean, this is getting on. We're through February, President's Day, and where is China? Where is business China the first, second week of March?
Well, can these factories get back to work? And I think this is a massive issue right now. I've spoken to someone recently that has factories over in China, and they're trying to ramp up production again, and they're really struggling, and they're worried about getting illnesses in the factories, and that's why the next couple of weeks is so critical.
And I would point out, Lisa, Peter Hotez from Baylor University absolutely nailed the effect of quarantine. And whether it's quarantine on a boat in Tokyo or it's quarantine somewhere in China, does quarantine work? And we've seen in the last 24 hours it doesn't.
Yeah, in the meantime, there's a question about the accuracy of the data coming out of China as they report some sort of stagnating in the number of cases. And there was a really interesting story in the Financial Times talking about the alternative data, John, that different investors are trying to use, whether it's factory emissions, traffic patterns, airline tickets, just anything to get a sense of what's going on.
Well, the talk about bailing out the airline industry over in China today, I'd point you towards another FT article on Jaguar Land Rover rushing parts out of China in suitcases. Literally, that's where we've got to for JLR over in Coventry, England at the moment, really struggling to get the key components to get the production out there.
The late, great Ken Pruitt would just love you right now. He'd have a tear in his eye.
What would he say?
He says Jaguar, Tom, correctly, unlike Jaguar.
Jaguar.
Jaguar. I used to get lectured by Ken Pruitt. It's Jaguar. Like Coventry.
I will say one other thing. One other notice, Adidas.
No, it's Adidas.
Saying that business in Greater China dropped 85% in the week since January 25th. Temporary.
Can we all stop? And I know you're going to get to Chris Casanti here, who's actually participated in this. John, 10-year track record of Apple with the latest surge, 28% per year. Can we just note there's other companies doing that, like Adidas, 24% per year for the last 10 years?
I've been talking about this over the last couple of weeks. The T word, transitory, it just keeps coming up again and again.
I thought it was existential.
And people will forgive. People will forgive companies for a really rubbish Q1. Most people have written off Q1 now. It's show me 2, 3, 4, show me the 12-month view. Are things better now in 12 months than they are at the moment? And a lot of people would say things will be better in 12 months' time, and that seems to be what people are holding on to. Let's bring in Chris Grisanti, shall we, of Grisanti Capital, the CEO. Chris, your thoughts on that? Every day we ask ourselves, what are things like in 12 months?
I'm sitting here laughing at you guys. This is the most depressing room I've been in about 2 weeks. Factories are closing. Spare parts are being smuggled out of China.
You haven't been more depressing than this?
No.
We could go worse.
No. And I think that this is exactly why the market is climbing a wall of worry. I think that Jonathan has it. The first quarter is going to be thrown out, and we're going to look ahead. And 6 months from now, with a huge stimulus in China, and if you're going to have a virus contagion, a dictatorship is the place to have it, because they lock it down and they can impose controls that we cannot. And I think the end result of that will be probably relatively benign, and they'll take care of the workers. They will stimulate their way out of this in a way that we could not.
Well, let's be clear here, Chris. The economic problems are coming from the containment efforts.
Sure.
Not from the virus per se. It's the fact that we do have a dictatorship that means that we've shut down half the country.
Right, but you do that so that you don't have an enormous cataclysm of economic downturn that lasts quarters after quarters. So I think the market is saying, hey, we get what you're doing. We accept it. We're okay with it.
The market says that. You talk to health officials, and actually there was a report out this morning from a health organization saying that China, thanks to their containment efforts, has bought several weeks of additional time for the rest of the world to prepare. Several weeks.
Right.
And the economic fallout quite substantial. None of us are medical experts. John makes a really good point of emphasizing that. We're not going to get into the medicine of this. When do we move beyond temporary, transitory, to something more worrisome for you as an investor?
Yeah, I think one of the things to look at is the market itself. So in other words, folks that for the last 18 months, for different reasons, whether it's the election, whether it's healthcare issues, or now the coronavirus, are saying, well, the market is complacent, the market is this. They've been wrong for the last 18 months. I think it's wiser to bet on the side of the market. Be cautious, because all those things you're saying, we do not know the answers to. But so far, I think the pessimism in this room is too great.
Okay, the pessimism in this room is too great, but you've got to do something. You and I were talking earlier, the weight of do nothing right now. How do you find comfort? Where within a financial presentation or the product diversity of a given company is where you find comfort right now? How do you discover comfort in something with a multiple double what you're used to?
Well, first of all, they're not double. They are 30% higher than normal, which is not great.
Toothpaste companies are trading at a 25
Sure, so I don't own the toothpaste companies, so they're growing at 1% a year. I get that. But if you look at Facebook, for example, 21 times this year. Stock? Yeah, at 21 times this year.
Explain that.
Yeah, here we go. So I'm getting a company that's growing 3 times the S&P for maybe a 20% premium to the S&P multiple right now.
Same thing with Amazon.
Amazon's a little more of a stretch, but it's not the moonshot that, for example, Tesla might be. So which we would stay away from. But a Google and a Facebook, to me, are great examples of value for a transformed economy. These companies are growing. They still have a runway to growth for the next 3 to 5 years, and they're trading at just a slight premium to the market.
What about the sectors we never talk about, like medical or consumer discretionary?
Sure. So in consumer discretionary, we are moving right towards the streaming companies, the Roku's, the Disney with the new Disney Plus. These are exciting growth areas even for large companies. So there is still value out there. I look at that dollar chart that we talked about on television a few minutes ago, and that's hitting a new high. And the reason is because the U.S. economy has been stimulated for the last year and will keep on plugging ahead.
I mean, I'll get out. 3, 2, 1. The dollar chart on radio is something.
Yeah, charts on radio work beautifully.
Just look at that chart.
I mean, let's give Tom a little bit more credit. He said multiples have doubled. What was the multiple on Apple 12 months ago?
True. No. Apple was a deep value stock.
It was
18 months ago. Right. And take the cash out, and it was 11.
Earnings of what? 25 times.
Yeah.
That's a multiple that's practically doubled,
and
that's a multiple that's doubled
Procter and Gamble
on the
at
biggest
low 20s or
stock
Apple at the low
in
20s?
the United States. No, I'm just saying that what Tom has said still stands. Multiples have doubled on some of the biggest companies out there.
For Apple, yes. For Facebook and Google, no. They're still trading at low 20 multiple because their growth has kept up with the stock price. Yeah, that's an exaggeration, but it's not off the charts. We're not talking 1999.
I'm just struggling with this idea that growth has outperformed value pretty significantly. So it feels a little bit like, what does it mean to be a growth versus value stock?
Right.
Let's just redefine the stocks that look like they're the best as value and then invest in those, even if they're categorized as growth by everybody else. How much overlap is there? I mean, honestly, because a lot of people would view the big tech companies as the growth stocks.
And I think to succeed in this environment, and I think going forward, I think secularly things have changed. You have to do what we have done, which is value in an economy that's been transformed. So it's no longer the DuPonts and the General Motors that are the value stocks. They are more the stocks that have asset-light technology. So Apple, if they build a $5 billion, if they spend $5 billion in the Apple Watch, they expense all of that. Or Ford would do it over 30 years, so it looks better. But Apple's the better company.
Come back when multiples double again. We'll have Apple with a 35.
Well, maybe. It'll be 1999 all over again.
Chris Grisanti, thank you so much. Doing the Prince Act there. Thank you.
Chris came in hot today, didn't he?
He's fired up.
It's awesome.
You guys are just depressing in here.
Well, I love it. You brought a little joy.
What did we say that was depressing? I said
it was amazing.
You're smuggling spare parts out in suitcases.
That's just stating the fact, Chris.
China is shutting.
Wait. A ray of optimism has entered the studio. And now with the news to Michael Barr.
Thank you very much, Tom, Lisa, John. The Democratic presidential candidates will debate tonight in Nevada. It comes as new polls show Bernie Sanders with a commanding lead. An NBC Wall Street Journal poll shows the Vermont senator with 27%. An ABC Washington Post poll shows Sanders with a 32% lead. Meanwhile, a poll by the Public Policy Institute of California shows Sanders with 32% support among likely Democratic voters in the critical Super Tuesday state. As the race for the Democratic presidential nomination continues ahead of Nevada's Saturday caucuses, former mayor of South Bend, Indiana, Pete Buttigieg, spoke at a Las Vegas town hall and took issue with President Trump and one of his high-profile supporters, questioning his marriage to his husband as it relates to running for president.
The idea of the likes of Rush Limbaugh or Donald Trump lecturing anybody on family values? I'm sorry, but one thing about my marriage is it's never involved me having to send hush money to a porn star after cheating on my spouse with him or her.
Attorney General William Barr is said to have told people close to him he's considering quitting his post after President Trump wouldn't stop tweeting about Justice Department cases. Last week, Barr said Trump's tweets make it impossible for him to do his job. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg. John, Tom, Lisa.
Michael Barr, thank you very much. This one just for Chris Grisanti. The large chunk of the second biggest economy in the world is shut down. The third largest economy in the world is contracting, and the fourth largest economy in the world right now is stagnating and perhaps even on the brink of recession. But stocks on the year, Chris, this is for you. A little more than 4% on the
It sounds like a good time to buy stocks.
This is why I'm in the triple leverage all cash fund. I have to listen to this.
It always sounds wiser to be pessimistic, but you make more money by being optimistic.
I agree with that, Chris. I've said that many times over the last 10 years. Chris Grisanti there, Grisanti Capital CEO, willing not to sound too intelligent when talking about markets.
But
Equity
making money.
futures up by 9 points, positive a third of 1%. In the bond market, let's get you up to speed on treasuries. Yields coming at a single basis point to 155 on 10s. On 2s, Tom, 142.
Curve flatter.
14 basis points.
Yeah. Curve flatter, and also you've got stocks that indicate higher.
Near the flattest levels of the year, the euro going nowhere, a 107 handle from New York this morning. Good morning, you are listening to Bloomberg Surveillance.
Message and data rate may apply. T&C and privacy terms can be found at bevel.com/terms. Please don't text and drive.
Have you wanted to speak a new language, but you thought it'd be too hard or take too much time? Then try Babbel for free by texting EXPLORE to 64,000. In just 15 minutes a day, you'll be on your way to speaking a new language in just a few weeks. And right now, you can try Babbel for free. Babbel starts out teaching you words and phrases by matching them with pictures. You won't believe how easy the interactive program is. Soon the sentences get a little bigger, and before you know it, you're having simulated conversations voiced by native speakers. And because Babbel is crafted by language experts and uses the spaced repetition method, in just 10 to 15 minutes a day, you'll be speaking the language of your choice with real confidence. With Babbel, you can speak a language. Just text EXPLORE to 64,000 and start your first lesson in the language of your choice for free. Download the Babbel app or text EXPLORE to 64,000 and try it for free. Text EXPLORE to 64,000.
Hey y'all, Jeff Foxworthy here. Now, if you've ever found yourself repeating the same thing over and over for 75 years, you might be Smokey Bear.
Only you can prevent wildfires.
That's why I'm filling in for Smokey to switch things up, because there's a lot more to say. And I should know because my grandfather was a firefighter. And one of the things he taught me is that the people that love the outdoors the most are often the ones accidentally starting wildfires, which means always BYOB. No, bring your own bucket to the campfire. And be extra careful with things like burning yard trimmings. Don't just walk away, or chances are you might be starting a wildfire. So for the love of the outdoors, go to SmokeyBear.com to learn more about wildfire prevention. Brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service, your state forester, and the Ad Council.
Influential.
Teaching shapes lives. Becoming a teacher means a career of opportunities. You could head a subject department or work towards school leadership. And with a minimum starting salary of £24,000 to £30,000, teaching has never been so rewarding. Teaching. Every lesson shapes a life. Search Get Into Teaching. Starting salary dependent on location.
It might still be cold and dark outside, but at least a new phone can brighten things up. You can get an epic iPhone 8 with a 12-megapixel camera at an epic price. At Tesco Mobile, you can get the iPhone 8 for only £19.99 a month. That's a saving of £90. So go in store or search Tesco Mobile. Tesco Mobile. Every little helps.
Ends 23rd of February, saving £2.50 per month over 36 months. Was £22.49. 36-month credit and rolling monthly usage agreements required. Subject to status phase. Policy applies. See tescomobile.com/terms.
Taking it for a spin has changed. Giving it a whirl has changed. With £500 towards a qualifying new Vauxhall with 4.9% APR representative when you take a test drive, the rules have changed. Book your test drive this weekend. Vauxhall. New rules Britannia. Allowance provided as deposit contribution on qualifying new Vauxhalls. Conditional sale and personal contract purchase only. Subject to status. T's and C's. 18 plus Vauxhall Finance. Registered by 2nd of April 2020. Search Try Your New Vauxhall.
Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm Karen Moscow. It is 7:17 on Wall Street, and Bloomberg Daybreak is out on customer terminals, bringing you all the news you need to start your day. Let's get a check at the latest headlines with Hannah George at the Bloomberg Daybreak desk. Good morning, Hannah.
Good morning, Karen. Hong Kong is reporting a second fatality from the coronavirus, while China's death toll eclipses 2,000. At the same time, Hubei province is reporting the fewest new cases since it changed its counting method. Today's minutes from the Fed are unlikely to offer much on the impact of the virus. Instead, traders are focused on the discussion around the central bank's reduction in Treasury bill purchases. A source says William Barr is telling associates he may quit over President Trump's tweets. At the same time, the Justice Department is saying the Attorney General has no plans to resign. And there's more bad news for Boeing. The company is inspecting more than 400 737 MAX jets after discovering tools and rags left in fuel tanks of newly built but undelivered planes. For all the news you need to start your day, check out Daybreak on your mobile phone on the Bloomberg Anywhere app. Karen.
All right, Hannah, thank you. S&P futures up 10 points this morning. Dow futures up 86. NASDAQ futures up 40. The DAX in Germany is up 0.6%. 10-year Treasury up 2/30 seconds, yield 1.55%, and the yield on the 2-year 1.41%. NYMEX crude oil is up 1.4% or 73 cents at $52.78 a barrel. And COMEX gold is up 0.5% or $7.50 at $16.11.10 an ounce. The euro 1.0795 against the dollar. British pound 1.2992 and the yen 110.43. And that's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Tom, John, and Lisa.
Karen, thanks so much. Thanks for being with us this morning. 5 things you need to know right now. Thank you, Interactive Brokers, for your support as well. John, what's your strong dollar nuance on EM? I mean, the JP Morgan EM index is breaking down to new weakness, seen life of series, if you will. And I mean, there's the idiosyncrasy, Turkey and Brazil and this, but there's got to be a bigger story here than just strong dollar.
Well, the way you've got to think about emerging markets always for the policymaker is that they face downside risk to growth and upside risk to inflation, and the central banker has got to come and find an appropriate interest rate to put you at. So you mentioned Turkey. Turkey has an inflation rate of just north of 12%, and they cut rates down to 10.75. How much extra space do they have to ease from here? That's the problem. So you look at the FX market, the inflation risk posed by currency, say in South Africa, that's down a little more than 6%, and in Brazil, that's down by almost 8% year to date for both of those currencies. That's pretty brutal.
Yeah, it's pretty brutal, but it's pretty specific. There also, though, is a broader economic story when it comes to Southeast Asia, and a lot of people are looking at the emerging markets, Asian countries, for the fallout and the inability to necessarily counter with some of the measures that we're seeing from China.
I mean, it's just interesting back and forth, and we'll see this. And we're plotting this, folks, with the blended dollar index 99.50 called the DXY. And I don't, just as one example, rounded up Turkish lira weaker to a 6.08.
There's a big question here as DXY gets to the highest level since 2013, and that is, when do we hear from President Trump? Right? When does he come out and say it's too high? Yeah. Actually, 2017. I correct myself. It's the highest since the strongest since 2017. At what point does he start to try to jawbone it down? And it seems like that's the threshold. That's the Trump put that a lot of people are looking for. I don't know whether he's going to do it just yet. Do you think he will?
I will just have to see. I think he's a little distracted.
Look, my question is whether the Fed weighs in. I mean, that's my question. Whether you actually get a comment from the Federal Reserve.
In the old days, they never would have mentioned.
Well, do you remember the Stan Fisher days? In the Stan Fisher days, there was a moment there where they could push back just a little bit.
But honestly, this isn't going to necessarily deter people from importing things from the United States. With everything else, they can blame coronavirus, they can blame an economic slowdown, they can blame it on a lot of other things other than the strong dollar.
No, but they can look at their CPI target and say that the strong dollar and the FX channel is hindering their efforts to get there. They can make that point quite easily.
Meanwhile, gold, ascendant, reaching highest since 2013.
Well, gold's flying, and you always have to think, what's the opportunity cost of holding gold? The excuse was always they don't get a yield. There's no dividend. There's no coupon. Obviously not, but when you look at treasuries elsewhere and you look at where rates are, and that was the story of last year, as rates grind lower, gold, the diminishing opportunity cost, just gets in gold's favor a little bit more, and that's been a story of the last year or so.
What I find fascinating, and I haven't done a linear extrapolation of gold, but nobody's framing higher prices. Everybody's cute. They're out 1,500, they're out 1,600, they're out 1,700. I don't hear many people talking 2,000. Or 2,500.
Because they've been wrong. They've been wrong before. A lot of people have been making a gold call, and it's underperformed where people thought that it would. Yeah. Look, it's interesting that it's ascendant right now at a time when we see equities rallying. What's sort of what is this sort of an expression of? Is it gloom? Is it inflation?
It's low rates. The whole trade in the market right now is low rates. And I keep going back to that quote from Alberto Gallo of algebra. It's long central banks and short growth. Pretty much every asset class right now captures that story.
I want to talk about yields, and I want to talk about something that's cropping up in selected conversations, John, and that's sovereign bubble. They're not focused on credit markets. They're focused on full faith in credit, price up, yield down. Do you, within the real yield, do you see bubble characteristics coming out of the smartest research?
Look, when the market is the way it is, you're naturally going to ask questions about whether this is going to remain this way for a long time, how unsustainable it all is. But on the sovereign side, Tom, in Europe right now, if there's a policy rate of negative 50 basis points at the ECB, if there's a policy rate at the SNB of negative 75 basis points, and you consider sovereign debt as a risk-free asset, then how close are you going to trade to the policy rate? Are you going to say that's a bubble? I think you'd be hard-pushed to make that point.
I will say that people have said in the past that the risk always builds in the safest debt, right? I mean, this was the AAA-rated CDOs and the AAA-rated mortgage-backed securities. But no crisis looks the same as the last one, first of all. And second of all, the greater fear is that it leads to a deflationary spiral where people don't earn income and then they don't spend income and you just sort of have stagflation. That seems to be the feeling more than something that's going to necessarily burst.
I'm much more concerned about what's happening with corporates right now and in corporate credit.
Expand on that.
I just find that far more concerning because what we see in places like Europe, we mentioned LVMH, really highly rated credit, strong balance sheet, all of those things, comes out and does an acquisition, raises capital in the debt market to buy Tiffany. 2 of the Euro tranches, negative yields. So basically investors offering to pay up to LVMH so they can make an acquisition. Then the ECB comes out with this corporate purchase program. The ECB went and bought the debt, Tom. Euro-denominated, new issue, straight onto the balance sheet of the European Central Bank. So my problem isn't where the ECB is buying per se. It's not in the sovereigns. It's everywhere else in the high-yield space where yields have just compressed because of what is happening elsewhere.
There are a couple stories out, including a brilliant dissertation in the FT this morning, out about 5 hours ago, on a small firm called Goldman Sachs. And this is percolating. This is 5 things you need to know. It's really, John, beginning to percolate. The body's moving out of Goldman Sachs. There's no question about it.
You think morale's down?
I don't think it's got to be. But it's a drip. It's like, on a Tuesday and maybe on the next Thursday. And I don't want to go into the details. I don't have the names in front of me. But there's no question that Goldman Sachs is percolating, and there's a study of it is percolating within the zeitgeist of what we see on Wall Street.
There was a really interesting story kind of speaking to the Europe versus U.S. global bank discussion about how international flows from European banks have slowed down and not in the U.S. Yeah. And I raise that because there is a sort of existential angst, if you will, hanging over the entire banking sector in the U.S. or in Europe.
Thank you, Interactive Brokers. Folks, futures up 9, Dow futures up 75. This is Bloomberg.
Why has J.D. Power ranked Commonwealth Financial Network #1 in independent advisor satisfaction among financial investment firms for the 6th straight time? We think it comes down to one thing: you. Because it's your input and feedback that keeps us focused on what's most important to you and your clients and continually pushes us to be the best we can be. Maybe that's why we receive top marks in every category of the J.D. Power 2019 Advisor Satisfaction Survey. They named us #1 in client support, #1 in firm leadership, #1 in operational support, #1 in compensation, #1 in professional development support, and #1 in technology support. Ready to partner with the best? Call Commonwealth at 866-462-3638 or visit commonwealth.com and feel the power. Member FINRA, a registered investment advisor. For 2019 J.D. Power award information, visit jdpower.com/awards.
25 years ago, NJIT graduate Dick Sweeney co-founded Keurig Green Mountain, a company whose incredible innovations changed the way the world brews a cup of coffee. Today, he lectures widely on business leadership and is a strong advocate for NJIT's work to combine business education with the power of STEM.
NJIT is definitely fostering the innovative thinking for budding entrepreneurs simply because that's the world we live in. NJIT is producing students that have been trained, educated, and given the business acumen to be a contributor to a company. The distinct mission is to develop great STEM scholars. The attributes I've always looked for in team members are heart, smarts, guts, and luck. So we want people with passion, intelligence, courage, and never discount luck. The student coming out of NJIT has experienced all of that.
NJIT, New Jersey Institute of Technology. Learn more at njit.edu.
At the Bank of Santander, they've created Stan, a smart bot that can predict the future of remortgaging.
All right, Stan, will my mortgage rate go up?
1955 was the last time Newcastle won the cup.
No, try not to mumble.
Playing, let's get ready to rumble.
Meanwhile, at Santander, they can't predict your future, but they'll help secure it with great mortgage rates fixed for up to 10 years. See what's possible at Santander.
Early repayment charges apply. Lending subject to status and criteria. Your home may be repossessed if you do not keep up repayments on your mortgage.
I'm Captain Obvious, and every day people book trips on Hotels.com that you will later hate like. A hate like is when you like Becky's picture of another waterfall even though you kind of hate it because she's there and you're on the train next to a mouth breather. Don't hate like Becky's trip. Book your own with Hotels.com. Hotels.com. Be there, do that.
Build the trolley with your favourite brands for less at Asda. Mix and match across beauty products like Tresemme, Sure and Simple and get any two for only £3. Big brands, small prices. Don't compromise. Asda. Save money, live better. Selected stores and lines subject to availability. Prices range from £1.50 to £2.45.
The government and the NHS are prepared to deal with coronavirus. You can help too. The best way to protect yourself and others is to wash your hands with soap and water or use a sanitizer gel regularly throughout the day. Catch your cough or sneeze in a tissue, bin it, and wash your hands. If you have recently arrived back from specified areas, follow the returning traveller advice. Check the list of areas and find out more at nhs.uk/coronavirus.
At Ring, we've reinvented the doorbell. So no matter where you are, or what time of day, you can watch over your home and the things you care about. Ring Video Doorbell streams HD video and two-way talk straight to your phone, so you can speak to whoever's at your door from anywhere.
Delivery.
Oh, great. Could you leave it with my neighbour, please?
Sure, no problem.
And it's so simple, you can install it yourself in minutes. See, hear and speak to whoever's at your door from wherever you are with Ring Video Doorbell. Available at ring.com and selected retailers.
Broadcasting live from the Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studio in New York. Bloomberg 1130 to Washington, D.C. Bloomberg 99.1 to Boston. Bloomberg 106.1 to San Francisco. Bloomberg 960 to the country. Sirius XM Channel 119 and around the globe. The Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Surveillance.
From New York City, this is Bloomberg Surveillance from the Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studios. We're live on Bloomberg Radio. In the equity market, futures are positive by 9 points on the S&P 500. We bounced back by 0.25% on the S&P with gains worldwide too. A decent rally appearing over in Europe as well. In the bond market, Treasuries bid through yesterday. This morning, unchanged. 155 is your yield on 10s on 2s or 141. In foreign exchange, a big focus on euro dollar as the bad news just drips through 2020. Euro dollar with a 107 handle just south of 108 ahead of those PMIs coming up on Friday, Tom.
And what's interesting about this is it's really rolled over to EM. And, John, the big distinction I would make today is yen. That wasn't there yesterday. Now we've got weaker yen to go with it. And, you know, the dollar, it's ebbed back in the last 10 minutes. But basically, it's been a spike, not a moonshot, but a spike in dollar strength over the last 3 hours.
Dollar yen getting back to 110.45, Lisa. A weaker Japanese yen as the Chinese consider perhaps a little bit more stimulus with the airline sector very much in focus.
How much is this just a dollar story, though? This is my question with the dollar climbing, this being the one economy, the major economy that seems somewhat insulated from a lot of the pressures that we're seeing. Frankly, really take a toll on Europe in particular.
Europe very much in focus for me. The data point of the week, PMI's coming up on Friday. I just wonder, how bad do they need to be to change the narrative? Because when we look at the corporate guidance, if you get any kind of warning, people are comfortable with Q1 being bad. They want to see the rest of the year. They believe that the bad news will be transitory. Does that same attitude that we have towards some of the corporate guidance apply to the data that we could get this coming Friday?
Yeah, one thing that's kind of interesting, there was an industry group that was in Europe that was surveyed, and they showed that there was unlikely to see much genuine growth. And this is in stark contrast to what you're hearing out of the officials, out of policymakers and out of central bankers that are cautiously optimistic that this is transitory. People are getting less optimistic in the industry. And I wonder at what point that's going to bleed into markets that are absolutely fueled by QE.
Let me get to some optimism in the pre-market. Tesla up by 6.84%. Big rally through the week. 917, Tom. And Piper out with a street high price target today of $928. We're almost there. 928 6 months ago sounded ridiculous, and we're almost there.
Can we review the Morgan Stanley call yesterday? I mean, I can honestly say they have a short-term enthusiasm, but a long-term Is that right?
They gained 7.3% yesterday off the Morgan Stanley call.
No, I don't know. Let's see if I don't know.
His most optimistic projection. So this is Adam Jonas over at Morgan Stanley. The bull case is $1,200 a share. Okay, that's the bull case. The bull case, not his base case, but the bull case.
There is a transformation in the story here, I would say, away from just an auto manufacturer to a company that excels in being the leader in electric vehicle batteries. If they master the battery technology, that is a game changer. And that seems to be the message out of a lot of these analytics shops.
That's what Piper's talking about this morning.
Yes.
That you need to start thinking about the solar and storage business and not necessarily about the automotive segment. And their belief on the bull side of things, at least, is that the solar and storage business starts to match maybe the automotive business over time. So more optimism out there. Joel Levinson joining us around the table, Bloomberg Intelligence Director of Credit Research. Good morning to you, Joel.
Hey, good morning, John.
Let's talk about that optimism around that single name. How much of a conversation are you having with your sources in the market right now about this one specific name, Tesla?
Yeah, well, it's funny when a bull case is $1,200 a share and a bear case is zero, right? This is a pretty wide assortment of views. But I think from a
Are we hearing that it could go to zero from anybody?
That was Adam's bear case, yes, over at Morgan Stanley.
His base case is 500. I think we should put out his base case. We keep talking about the tails here, the extremes. The base case of Mr. Jonas over at Morgan Stanley is $500 a share.
Right.
And that's $360 previously.
And that's right about where your average is for equity analysts is $500 a share. Now, for a credit guy, when I look at the converts, and almost all the converts convert at $360 a share, it tells me that we have a lot of flexibility here in how you want to think about those converts, whether they're debt or debt-like or equity-like.
What would be their debt strategy? I mean, debt's basically free. Even for Tesla, the cost is next to nothing, it seems, even particularly on a real basis as well. They're in a hugely high fixed cost business. I mean, they did a secondary. Did they just go out and redebt?
No, I don't think so. I think, if anything, they try to eliminate debt. And when you think about what their profile is, Tom, they have $13 billion of total debt. Yeah. But about $4.5 billion of that is non-recourse. That's Solar City bonds that if Solar City was to not pay on them, Tesla would not have to pay. And then another $4 billion is converts. So when you think about what actually remains, they have about $4 billion of recourse debt on about $4 billion of EBITDA this year. So they're levered at about 1 times with about $8 billion of cash.
Give us a nuance on their leverage right now. Their debt leverage as well. Give us just one ratio. Walk through that.
Sure. Well, I guess if I was a banker, I would say that their debt leverage, if I was saying that the converts are equity-like, would be about 1 times. If I think about where
1 time,
about 1 times their cash flow.
Compare that to Ford, Joe.
Yeah, well, Ford is more like 2.5 to 3 this year.
Exactly.
Because just like the old school, there's no pension at Tesla, unlike a Ford or a General Motors, which also adds into their debt load.
Well, let's talk about the 2025 debt. Mm-hmm. I think getting into the capital structure of Tesla is really, really important, thinking about where various things trade. Tesla, the price of the debt, 103, spot 109, and the call price, which will trigger on the date 15th of August of this year, 103.50. 0.975. Are we bumping up against the limits to how far this credit, this specific security, can actually rally, Joel?
I think so. Obviously, it's not going to trade much above the call price, and so that might be the upside limitation factor. I think the downside, though, might be pretty limited too, because when you look at the credit drivers here, you have an increase in earnings, in cash flow, and likely ratings.
So right now, Tesla is a believe it or not stock, although increasingly believe it, and not just that, but especially with the battery bet, there's sort of this fundamental feeling. But a lot of people hold it up as an example of froth, and they have for years with other companies that are faith companies that have been able to borrow at relatively low rates. And I'm just wondering how much within the corporate debt universe, as John pointed out, where yields are plummeting to their lowest since the crisis, how much are people using this as an example, and can it be represented as an example of just how people are willing to buy, even if there isn't necessarily a lot of optionality on the upside?
Yeah, no, I think the price to me makes a lot of sense. And what I would say, Lisa, is that if I look at CDS as a measurement, Ford, Renault, like BB+, BBB- credits, things that are rated 6 notches above where Tesla is, trade about the same level in CDS. And then in the bonds trade slightly better than the B3, CAA1 ratings. And so I think that CDS actually gets it right. And maybe the raters probably should meet in the middle between where Tesla is and where they rate Ford in kind of the double B zone. And for that, I would say, if anything, Tesla actually has upside to its profile. It just has gotten there a lot quicker than the raters have been able to move.
For one of our listeners that got lost in the alphabet jargon you were just talking about, how do you link the bond movement into the equity price movement? Are they correlated?
Oh, I definitely think so. And I think you could see that a lot clearer through CDS, which is...
Through credit default swaps.
Yes, which has dramatically gone up over the past year, but it's tightened by about 300 points in the past year.
Okay, so the credit default swaps are signaling there is less risk in Tesla.
That's right. So, like a bear case, as far, if you go back a year ago, was this is a liquidity issue, this is a default waiting to happen. That story is no longer part of the narrative today.
Hey, Joel, we've got to get you back soon because we need to talk about Fallen Angels as well. Kraft Heinz downgraded to junk, Macy's, Renault. Big story starting to brew. We've been talking about it for so long. The triple Bs, will they ever become junk? And a few of them are. Joel, good to see you. Bloomberg Intelligence Director of Credit Research. Tell.
Joel, thanks so much. The Bloomberg NJIT STEM Report brought to you by New Jersey Institute of Technology, a top 100 national university in the latest U.S. news. Enroll to report college rankings. Learn more at news.njit.edu. Here's Bob Moon.
Tom, Jonathan, Lisa, good morning. Here's what's making news in science, technology, engineering, and math. In case you haven't heard, the Census Bureau wants you to know you'll be able to participate in this year's once-every-decade population count in a whole new way.
You have completed the 2020 census online. Thank you. You may now close the web browser.
Uh-oh. Some observers worry that this year's census carries the same potential for mayhem as last month's Iowa caucuses, except on an infinitely larger scale. But who are you going to listen to, the Luddites or your government?
The 2020 census is easy. Completing these questions only takes about 10 minutes. You can respond online from a computer, tablet, or mobile phone 24 hours a day.
Then again, consider the Iowa debacle and the U.S. Census. Both events involve a large population, new technology that has not been thoroughly tested, and an entire country waiting on the results. In addition, census workers who knock on the doors of homes will use smartphones and a new mobile app to relay answers. And some watchdog agencies and lawmakers are concerned about whether the systems are ready for prime time. We're about to find out. Census Day is April 1st. April 1st. Uh-oh. Calling all nerds. The federal government is looking for a few good eggheads, and the call is being made by the U.S. Digital Service. The Washington-based agency wants to hire private sector coders, programmers, and software engineers. The goal to make government systems more user-friendly. The service was launched after the 2013 crash of the healthcare.gov website. That's the Bloomberg NJIT STEM report. Tom, Jonathan, Lisa.
Bob Moon, thanks so much. Greatly appreciate that. There's time now for the Bloomberg News. Here he is, Michael Barr.
Thank you, Tom and Lisa. The Democratic presidential candidates will debate tonight in Nevada. Mike Bloomberg joins Bernie Sanders, Pete Buttigieg, Joe Biden, Amy Klobuchar, and Elizabeth Warren in the debate. We should mention that Mike Bloomberg is the founder and majority owner of Bloomberg LP, the parent company of Bloomberg Radio. Meanwhile, Senator Warren made her presidential pitch last night to culinary union workers in Las Vegas.
The White House is a mess. And when you've got a mess and you really need it cleaned up, call a woman to get the job done.
It comes as new polls show Bernie Sanders with a commanding lead. An NBC Wall Street Journal poll shows the Vermont senator with 27%. An ABC Washington Post poll shows Sanders with 32%. A poll by the Public Policy Institute of California shows Sanders with 32% support among likely Democratic voters in the critical Super Tuesday state. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo says the coronavirus is now a problem that is of global scale as the death toll has topped 2,000 from the illness. Pompeo says it's important that every nation state act in a way that's consistent with reducing risk to citizens all across the world. He says China needs to do better.
It took us too long to get the medical experts into country. We wish that could have happened more quickly. But we are hopeful that the Chinese government will increase its transparency, will continue to share this information.
Mainland China reports the total for cases is at 74,185. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg.
Hey, Tom. Michael, thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Some stunning numbers coming from that post-ABC poll, Tom, that Michael mentioned. On electability, the most electable candidate. Now, for Joe Biden, that's dropped from 38 to 19%. And believe it or not, this was a surprise to me. It might be a surprise to many of you as well. Senator Sanders is now seen as the most electable, cited by 30% of Democratic leaners as the best situated to beat Donald Trump. Now, I don't know how those within the party leadership feel about it, but certainly the Democratic-leaning voters or potential voters leaning that way, Tom.
We've had 4 major polls in the last 2 days, I think. They each tell a different story. That's what I would focus on. Every poll seems to be different. Nuanced.
We'll be talking about those stories a little bit later in the program. Equity futures are positive, up 9 points on the S&P 500. Positive around about 1/3%. From New York City this morning, live on Bloomberg Radio. Good morning to you all. This is Bloomberg.
With the Bloomberg Business of Sports report, I'm Michael Barr. NASCAR driver Ryan Newman remains in serious condition after a wild wreck at the end of Monday's Daytona 500. His injuries are said to be not life-threatening. Corey LaJoie, who was caught up in that crash, spoke to ABC's Good Morning America about race car safety.
NASCAR's really on the forefront of trying to make racing safety, as well as just the cup cars, all the short track cars all across the country. NASCAR's on the leading edge of making our cars safe, whether it be inside or outside.
Driver Denny Hamlin won the race. Wanda Sports Group is considering selling the Ironman triathlon business it bought in 2015, according to people familiar with the matter. The China-based sports marketing and event promoter is said to be working with an advisor and has held discussions with some private equity buyers that expressed interest in the business. Wanda Sports is seeking to fetch about $1 billion for the triathlon business. And that is a Bloomberg Business of Sports report. I'm Michael Barr.
Asset managers who seize change to launch new strategies, add distribution channels, or exploit new technology to re-engineer the investor experience are often rewarded. However, in an industry paralyzed with complexity, few act with agility or decisively. Few run their businesses strategically, yet the most competitive managers in the market know with the right partner and a flexible operating system, you can. Go boldly toward change with SEI Investment Manager Services.
I'm Steve Meyer, president of SEI's Investment Manager Services. At SEI, we understand the emerging forces that will define success for asset managers and what firms will need to compete tomorrow. That's why we continually optimize SEI's global operating platform. If your business requires greater agility, our advanced technology, integrated best-in-class systems, and multi-asset expertise can be your catalyst for business transformation.
With SEI Investment Manager Services, you lead the charge in a competitive marketplace. Learn more at SEIC.com/Cs.
WW Weight Watchers Reimagined have a new customized weight loss program, My WW, where no foods are off limits. Just fill out a simple assessment and get matched to a plan that suits you. You love eating carbs, cooking at home, or eating out? No problem with this new customized plan. Discover which new MyWW plan can make losing weight easier for you. Shape up for spring with your first month free, plus 2 free spa or gym passes. Offer ends 22nd of February. Subscription fees and conditions apply. Mainland UK only. See website for details.
At Ring, we've reinvented the doorbell. So no matter where you are or what time of day, you can watch over your home and the things you care about. Ring Video Doorbell streams HD video and two-way talk straight to your phone, so you can speak to whoever's at your door from anywhere.
Delivery.
Oh, great. Could you leave it with my neighbour, please?
Sure, no problem.
And it's so simple, you can install it yourself in minutes. See, hear and speak to whoever's at your door from wherever you are with Ring Video Doorbell. Available at ring.com and selected retailers.
It might still be cold and dark outside, but at least a new phone can brighten things up. You can get an epic iPhone 8 with a 12-megapixel camera at an epic price. At Tesco Mobile, you can get the iPhone 8 for only $19.99 a month. That's a saving of £90. So go in store or search Tesco Mobile. Tesco Mobile. Every little helps.
Ends 23rd of February, saving £2.50 per month over 36 months. Was £22.49. 36-month credit and rolling monthly usage agreements required. Subject to status phase. Policy applies. See tescomobile.com/terms.
Headlines and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm Karen Moscow. U.S. stock index futures are on the rise along with European shares after signs emerge that China may be planning further measures to support its economy as it reels from a virus-induced slowdown. The yen is weakening. We check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg. S&P futures are up 10 points this morning. Dow futures up 92. NASDAQ futures up 42. The DAX in Germany's up 0.5%. 10-year Treasury down 1/32, yield 1.56%. Yield on the 2-year 1.42%. NYMEX crude oil is up 1 1/3% or 70 cents at $52.75 a barrel. COMEX gold up 0.4% or $6.50 at $16.10 an ounce. The euro 1.0798 against the dollar. British pound 1.2996, and the yen is at 110.45. Watching Tesla up more than 7% this morning. Analysts at Piper Sandler have raised their price target on the stock above $900. They say Tesla's potential success in energy generation and storage will be the next big thing for the company. And Dish Network exceeded analyst estimates for sales and profit, boosting confidence that the company can offset satellite TV subscriber losses with gains in Sling TV streaming customers as it gears up for entry into the wireless service business. And that's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Tom, John, and Lisa.
Hey, Karen, thank you. Thank you very much. The countdown to the Democratic debates a little bit later in Nevada. Looking forward to that. And some big questions. These questions coming from Evercore ISI. I'll put the disclaimer up front. Michael Bloomberg, the founder, majority owner of Bloomberg LP, the parent company of Bloomberg News. And the question from Evercore ISI as follows. Number 1, can Bloomberg rise above the attacks? Number 2, can anyone deliver a blow to Sanders? 3, can either Klobuchar or Buttigieg use the debate stage yet again to bounce in the polls? And 4, can Biden use it to bounce back in the run-up to Super Tuesday, Lisa? Out of those 4, what's number 1 for you?
Well, I mean, look, Michael Bloomberg, the founding and majority owner of Bloomberg LP, this is going to be his first debate. And I think a lot of people are really focused on him, given how quickly he's risen in the polls. That said, Bernie Sanders has really risen to the front. The fact that he has become the front runner after Pete Buttigieg had been it for a while, after Elizabeth Warren had been it for a while, can he maintain that momentum? And does he deliver the same sort of you're with me or against me, whether you're a Democrat or not, leading to his supporters staying home if he does not get nominated as the candidate?
And Tom, I'd go as far as saying there's this 2016 comparison with candidate Donald Trump and the Republican Party, that Bernie Sanders is not the candidate the party might want or might not want, but it could be the candidate they end up with.
I think they will go in the booth and choose, and that's what happens. We saw that in New Hampshire with a vengeance. Chuck Gabriel with us. He's with Capital Alpha from Minneapolis today, but always focused on Washington as well. Chuck, what's going to be the prism of the Washington you know so well as they look at this debate in Nevada? How will Republicans and Democrats on the Hill, the senators, the members of the House, how will they observe this debate?
Well, thanks, Tom. I think everybody will be looking very, very closely at Michael Bloomberg and to see how he can actually perform in an uncontrolled environment, taking punches from 4 or 5 other candidates that really resent his skipping the first 4 events and sort of just paying his way past February and into Super Tuesday. So I think there'll be a big focus on that. But, while everyone is lamenting that Michael Bloomberg is suddenly developing a conscience about billions and taking on Wall Street in a preemptory way, looking forward to tonight. I think the bigger story, of course, is that Bernie Sanders is the beneficiary of all of this. And I think there's that's the second dynamic that will really be in evidence behind all of the Bloomberg hysteria tonight, and that is the Stop Bernie movement.
You have in the back of your wonderful research note the paragraph on the new Wall Street policies, not only of Mayor Bloomberg, but of the others as well. Can you win coast to coast on an anti-Wall Street theme?
I don't believe so for a minute. I really don't. There has been no hue and cry among the Democratic candidates outside of Liz Warren, who's really, uniquely burdened on this, having led the TARP Commission. There isn't in Congress. We actually had a bipartisan bill to take back a little bit of the Dodd-Frank Act just a couple of years ago. So, when you talk to Americans, they're not talking negatively about Wall Street, except to the extent they're really incited to do so by these populist sort of angry narratives. So I don't think so at all. And I think that really, maybe that's good news, that we won't have a lot of time to discuss whether Michael Bloomberg has made a financial transaction tax a floor rather than a ceiling for long, because, after this Saturday's Nevada caucuses, and then we go to South Carolina the following Saturday, we'll only have basically chosen 4% of delegates, but then on Super Tuesday, March 3rd, boom, 3 Super Tuesdays, 60% of the vote in March.
It's happening very quickly, Chuck, so let's talk about electability. Michael Bloomberg, Mr. Bloomberg, arguably has the opposite problem that Senator Sanders had, at least in terms of perception. There are people who believe Mr. Bloomberg would struggle to get the nomination ultimately, but ultimately he would do better in the general. The opposite applying to Senator Sanders in the minds of many. I'm just interested in the data, Chuck, that you're looking at the moment. I'm looking at a new poll from the Post and ABC that essentially still sees Senator Sanders as the most electable, cited by 30% of Democratic leaners as best situated to beat Trump. What do you see in the polls and the data that you look at, Chuck?
Well, I do think that, Sanders has a very, very loyal base of support. And there's not a single state where he doesn't have 15, 20, 25%. And, one of the reasons the Democrats are in this situation is they changed the rules, their primary rules, to basically front load more of the primaries and create this 15% proportional vote that, a candidate can't get any delegates unless they get at least 15% in a congressional district or a state. So, ironically, you're going to have a very congested field, and I think that I know what you're talking about. You're talking about where we'll be in the end, but we'll get a very different look at Bloomberg at that time. And I think really what Bloomberg speaks to, and those polls speak to, is Democrats just want to defeat Donald Trump, and they sense that a centrist will do it, and they think another billionaire who will get in the ring with the president is the right way to go. But Chuck, I don't think that's the majority of the party.
Chuck, just 20 seconds here. I'm wondering, from your perspective, how close do you think we are to sort of honing in on the candidate?
I think there's maybe a 30-40% chance that, Lisa, that we'll actually have a better chance than people suspect that we'll know who the Democratic nominee could be, and it very well could be Sanders by the end of March, early April, say mid-April with the New York primary. I think that's absolutely true, and of course Wall Street will freak out a bit, but nothing spooks this market, so why not do it now?
Chuck Gabriel, thank you so much with Capital Alpha here as we move to the debate. Our special coverage tonight on the debate, look for that from Bloomberg News, television, and radio. Futures up 10. Nice lift, John, and a persistent lift to the market. Futures up 10 with the VIX 14.36.
Yeah, I think the view of Chuck Gabriel at the end of that interview then perhaps resonates with a lot of people. Nothing does seem to spook this market at the moment as we approach all-time highs again in the bond market. This is how we're set up for treasuries. Yields unchanged at 156 on 10s, on 2s, yields a little bit higher, up a single basis point to 142. The curve just a little bit flatter. In foreign exchange, the euro still trading with a 107 handle. Very briefly this morning, now 108.03. From New York, this is Bloomberg Surveillance.
The Dacia Duster has won what car? Best family SUV less than £20,000. for the second year running. Time to roll out the fanfare. Starting from only $10,995, our prices are pretty modest, just like our celebrations. Visit Dacia.co.uk to find out more about our range of award-winning cars. Dacia, you do the maths. This is the sound of a Halifax customer who used to worry he wasn't saving enough, but is now saving the change every time he hops on a bus. Switch on Save the Change, and when you use your Halifax Visa debit card, we'll round up to the nearest pound and put the difference into your chosen Halifax savings account.
Good morning, this is your Southern service to London Victoria. Join in our onboard quiz. Here's our next clue. What C sounds like a handheld party food but keeps you dry and protected from the rain? Not canapes, canopies.
At Southern Railway, we're investing over £7 million into making improvements for you, like canopies, cycle parking and new platform lighting across more of our stations. Find out more and book your tickets at southernrailway.com. Southern Railway, we're with you.
When you're not listening to your team, take it to the end zone, the rim, or the net. Keep up with the biggest moments in sports by following TuneIn on social media.
Block, Cook into the end zone for the touchdown.
From reminders of the live top games to tips of the best sports stations and podcasts.
Welcome to Undisputed. We are live from Los Angeles. I'm Jenny Taft here with Skip Bayless.
Follow at TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to get the most out of TuneIn.
This week on the New Yorker Radio Hour, another election story, but this one with a twist.
We need changing, gotta check me a vote. I got LGBT rights and I'm a legalized dope. America's going broke and I ain't gonna sit back. While Creepy Joe looks at little girls like they some snacks.
Listen to this episode of the New Yorker Radio Hour on TuneIn today.
Major League Baseball is back. Are you ready to unlock the 2020 season with TuneIn Premium?
And this one is gone! It hits the foul pole!
Be there from day one with every single game of spring training, rivalry games, split squads, Cactus League, Grapefruit League. TuneIn Premium has it all. Then, when the pitch count starts for real, experience live and on-demand access to every game, everywhere you go, from opening day to the World Series. Don't miss out on the action. Search Premium to upgrade today.
This is not a commercial. This is a reminder. With TuneIn Premium, you could be listening to more music commercial-free. Get over 45 commercial-free music stations. Visit TuneIn.com/premium to upgrade.
We have to get it right the first time.
We always talk about the losers in a trade war.
You benefit if you're just further away from China.
So that you can too.
What are the ramifications if she crumbles or doesn't crumble?
Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business, Radio.com, and iHeartRadio apps, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening. From the financial capital of the world, 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio. This is Bloomberg Surveillance Economics.
The good news is the economy is strong. The bad news is the economy is strong.
Financial crises take a really long time to recover from.
Finance.
The strong job market's pulling people back in.
You can't have for very long, monetary union without a fiscal union.
Investment.
What we preach is extreme diversification.
It's hard to have sustained productivity without capital investment.
Bloomberg Surveillance with Tom Keene and Jonathan Farrow on Bloomberg Radio.
Good morning, everyone. John Farrow and Tom King. Lisa Abramowitz with us as well. Futures up 10. They advance up 8 earlier, up 10 now, up 93. The VIX 14.35. John and I transfixed on dollars trade. Are you paid in dollars or pounds sterling?
I'm funded with dollars. I think we talk about this once a quarter.
That's good, because then the roses of Valentine's, there you don't have to pay the foreign transaction tax.
For my mum.
Because they're funded in...
Are these my mum's roses?
Yeah, your mum's roses, because they're funded in dollars as well.
The cost center's in sterling. I'm funded in dollars. Is that what you're trying to imply?
That would be, it's a remittance.
I'm not sure my mum wants to be called a cost center.
His job is a carry trade, John.
It's one big carry trade. Right now the carry trade is $1 stronger. DXY, that blended set, 99.45. John, what's the distinction you see in foreign exchange today?
Look, right now everything's on pause until I think Friday. That's the next scheduled stop for this market. The PMIs out of the United States and out of Europe too. And I raised this question in the last hour, and I'll raise it again this hour too. This market's been very comfortable ignoring Q1 weakness around corporate guidance. I wonder how comfortable it will be with the same kind of story with the economic data that comes out this Friday.
Yeah, and again, this is economic data that begins to show China. We'll talk to Stephen Roach about that in a moment. Lisa, one thing that's resilient on the screen, which I did not expect, is oil 52.78 on West Texas Intermediate. That should be a 50 or even a 49 handle. It's not.
Yeah, and square that with gold, which is at its highest level since 2013. Why is there confidence that OPEC Plus is going to necessarily cushion the declines? Why is there a sense that the massive drop-off that you're seeing in refinery production over in China is just going to be transitory? Going back to that T word, John.
Let's review the China story this morning here before we get to Professor Roach. And John, to me, the issue is, and I talked to Steve Engel about this earlier, it's not about China, but really the focus, the zeitgeist overnight was Japan. And this goes to Peter Hotez, who I believe spoke to us on Surveillance on Radio the other day, the giant in virology from Baylor, and he was heated that quarantine is a medieval strategy that doesn't work. I think we're living that in 2020 in Japan.
I'll leave the medical opinions to the medical professionals. I think what we see in the world of business right now is a willingness to perhaps bring things back online, but a struggle to do so at full capacity. The refineries in China at the moment said to be processing 25% less crude than this time last year. And getting the staff back into the factories, Tom, and ramping up production again is proving to be quite difficult. We saw that in the Apple guidance in the last couple of days as well.
And then Adidas and Puma today, and to your point on earnings, at least, I mean, monitoring this is important. You do this with Paul Sweeney later in the day. It's a drip. It's like every day there's 3 or 4 major Chinese operations saying, here's where we are.
I'm just struggling to understand how temporary this could possibly be. Adidas saying that their sales have plummeted 85% in the weeks following January 25th. I'm struggling to understand how that's not going to be a problem, squared with this idea that a lot of companies are not necessarily paying their staff in China because they can't afford to if they're not in operation.
Well, not just can't afford. I've spoken to people with factories there. It's difficult to understand the different rules in each province, whether they do have to pay them as they remain at home. There's a lot of red tape to work through if you're a business operating in China at the moment. So it's one of the big challenges for a multinational at the moment. If you have factories in China, this tragic time for the Chinese people, what rules apply to you and where do they apply?
Let us begin a 3-hour conversation with a gentleman from Yale University. Stephen Roach invented Morgan Stanley economics. He literally brought the digital age to print economics 1 million years ago. He is holding court, giving out quality C's at Yale University. Steve, it's been too long. Wonderful to have you on.
Nice to talk to you, Tom and John.
In your book, The Next Asia, you have a great essay, China's Macro Imperatives. Right now, they have domestic imperatives. From where you sit, what is the to-do list for Beijing?
Number 1, 2, and 3 is simply to control the virus. The economy will come later. The economy is strong, resilient, and changing, but it's being subjected to a powerful shock, and it's all hands on deck to deal with that. And as I said, the economy will come later.
I mean, within this, and Steve, I've seen you with the pandas out in western China near Chengdu and all that. Up the Yangtze River, you've got Wuhan, where that Big Bend is. What's the thing the media, and for that matter, global Wall Street, get wrong about the resiliency of China to bounce back once they get through this virus?
Well, in the midst of a crisis, Tom, whether it's, in the depths of 08 or in other seemingly catastrophic developments like the Asian financial crisis of 97, 98, it seems like the world or your favorite economy is imploding. But these things have a way of passing. Right now, the evidence on infection rates and fatality rates remains worrisome. There's some second derivatives that are looking a little bit better, but the situation that you just alluded to in Japan is now increasingly problematic. And I would just note here that Japan, the third largest economy in the world, is probably back in recession again. I mean, they had a horrible print on fourth quarter GDP. The trade data released this morning point to spillovers into the first quarter of this year. So you're looking at 2 consecutive quarters of decline for a long recession-prone Japanese economy, who shot itself in the foot with another increase in their consumption tax. So, China is at a standstill. All the daily trackers of coal consumption and traffic are flat post Lunar New Year, when they normally have bounced back dramatically. So that economy is printing a very low number, if barely positive at all, in the first quarter. The world economy is starting to feel like a transitory, hopefully temporary recession in the first half of this year.
Professor, you did a fantastic interview with Barron's recently in the last couple of weeks, and I'd like to take the opportunity to point our audience to go and pick that up if they can. I'm just interested in exploring this further. Professor, it's not just Japan, of course, it's Germany as well. The economy's stagnating there. Just in terms of the dynamics that are shaking the global economy, just a little bit, relatively speaking, what is it you see that's transitory? What is temporary? Why will we come out of this the other side as the year grows older in better shape?
The virus, we now call it COVID-19. If you look at a SARS trajectory, John, there was a 1 quarter hit and then a very sharp rebound over the next 4 quarters. This is not SARS, but its infection rate is higher, but its mortality rate is lower. I think it will take longer to get a grip on this, but I think that the trajectory is relevant and comparable this time as well.
Professor Roach, you wrote Unbalanced, the Codependency of America and China. And I want to just put out a hypothetical that say it takes longer to get the coronavirus under control. This goes on for a longer period of time. Are people overly sanguine about the U.S. economy being immune to the impacts that we're seeing in China right now?
Of course they are, Lisa. I mean, the U.S. economy is viewed as Teflon-like, bulletproof, and there's seemingly nothing that could touch it. But, Greenspan had the best line of all. Actually, it was back in 97, 98, where he said the U.S. is not an oasis. And with the rest of the world, China, Japan, John pointed out Germany, and France as well, on the skids here. That's going to come back to bite us as well. And so our growth rate, which is not as weak as it is in other economies in the world, is far from strong. And, we're cruising at 2, which is not the biggest cushion to deal with another global shock.
Professor Roach, where do you expect to first see the effects of the slowdown in China, in Japan, in Germany manifest themselves in the U.S.?
Well, yeah, I think it'll come from our trade numbers. There's also already, as we've seen from Apple, a clogging of China-centric supply chains, which is going to stifle our ability to buy our favorite electronic device. And there are other spillover effects as well.
Steve, we've got to go, but I got one key question, which is just so critical, and I know our listeners want to hear your response to it. What is the cost of the accommodation of this central bank? I mean, the real Fed funds target rate is back negative. We're not down at Stan Fisher alter accommodation, but we're there, or on our way there, I should say. What's the price of the free lunch we've got right now?
Well, look, it's a long answer, Tom, but, free money enables financial instability. It enables zombie-like behavior of corporations who might otherwise be disciplined with a more meaningful cost of capital. And, of course, it facilitates the most reckless fiscal policy the United States has ever had in an economic expansion. The Fed enables the Congress to keep printing $1 trillion deficits as far as the eye can see.
Steve Roach, thank you so much with Yale University. An update there. It's been way too long. We got to get him in. more often.
More regularly. He's a busy man.
He's always busy, and he brings a holistic theme, almost a balance sheet themed economics.
I've always enjoyed our exchanges on China and what happens with global trade.
Tom, did you really see pictures of him with pandas?
Oh yeah. No,
that wasn't just made up.
No, Steve went out to Chengdu, and there's like Steve Roach hugging pandas. Well, they're big too. I mean, he was brave.
You're learning, aren't you? You don't know whether to believe some of the things Tom says. Welcome to the show.
Tesla's back to where I bought a share and it was a fractional share purchase. I bought like 3/4 of a share. I haven't got I don't have the confirmation yet. It's
a fun house.
I do like old school 5-day settlement.
Sounds very cool.
Yeah, it's very cool.
Michael Barr's with us.
With the news in New York City, here's Michael Barr.
Tom, John, Lisa, thank you very much. Attorney General William Barr has told people close to him that he is considering quitting his post after President Trump wouldn't heed his warning to stop tweeting about Justice Department cases. That's according to an administration official. The revelation comes days after Barr said that Trump's tweets about Justice Department cases and staffers make it impossible for him to do his job. The next day, Trump ignored Barr's request and insisted that he has the legal right to intervene in criminal cases. Barr's spokeswoman says the Attorney General has no plans to resign. Former Illinois Governor Rod Blagojevich is back home after his release from prison as part of presidential pardons and clemencies. Blagojevich had been behind bars for 8 years after he was convicted of trying to sell an appointment to President Obama's former Senate seat. Blagojevich maintained he is not politically corrupt.
I'm going to fight against the corrupt criminal justice system that all too often persecutes and prosecutes people who did nothing wrong, who over-sentence people, who show no mercy, and who are in positions that have no accountability. They can do it and say whatever they want.
Chicago Mayor Lori Lightfoot says she has compassion for Blagojevich's family, but there are other families dealing with the hardship of incarceration.
What we, I think, expect under our judicial system and our justice system is that people who have committed crimes accept responsibility.
Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg. John, Tom, Lisa.
Michael Barr, thank you. Mrs. Keaton just texted me a picture of avocados, Tom. She's found some for $1.49.
See?
Small house avocados, $1.49. Would you like me to reply?
Amazing.
How many would you like?
It's not amazing.
How many would you like?
Where have you been shopping for avocados?
I go to Whole Paycheck.
From New York City this morning, this is Bloomberg Surveillance.
Why do hedge funds and other alternative managers rely on Pershing for a highly personalized experience? Mark Alderati, a managing director at BNY Mellon's Pershing and head of Prime Services, explains.
In today's fast-paced environment, where the only constants are change and volatility, you need a prime broker who's both steady and agile, focused on supporting your needs so that you can focus on growing your business and producing results. Exceptional client service and advocating for our clients is at the core of what we do. Our award-winning high-touch team is just one of the benefits of working with BNY Mellon. We help alternative investment managers create great experiences for their clients. Whether it's customized financing, securities lending solutions, platform access, or outsourced trading, BNY Mellon's Pershing is a prime broker who's committed to this business and dedicated to meeting your evolving demands.
To learn more about the unique and industry-leading solutions for hedge funds and other alternative managers, visit Pershing.com. Pershing, LLC. Member FINRA, NYSE, SIPC.
Message and data rates may apply. T&C and privacy terms can be found at babbel.com/terms. Please don't text and drive.
Have you wanted to speak a new language, but you thought it'd be too hard or take too much time? Then try Babbel for free by texting EXPLORE to 64,000. In just 15 minutes a day, you'll be on your way to speaking a new language in just a few weeks. And right now, you can try Babbel for free. Babbel starts out teaching you words and phrases by matching them with pictures. You won't believe how easy the interactive program is. Soon the sentences get a little bigger, and before you know it, you're having simulated conversations voiced by native speakers. And because Babbel is crafted by language experts and uses the spaced repetition method, in just 10 to 15 minutes a day, you'll be speaking the language of your choice with real confidence. With Babbel, you can speak a language. Just text EXPLORE to 64,000 and start your first lesson in the language of your choice for free. Download the Babbel app or text EXPLORE to 64,000 and try it for free. Text EXPLORE to 64,000.
Hey, have you heard? The Mayor of London has launched his latest van scrappage scheme to help tackle London's toxic air. Small businesses or sole traders like me with a polluting van could now get £7,000, which you could use to trade up to a Euro 6 vehicle. And you could get an extra £2,500 towards running costs if you go electric. The scheme is now even easier to qualify for, and it's open to any businesses with up to 50 employees, like mine. So, I'm going to search TfL Scrappage to see if I'm eligible and apply. You should do the same. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
I've got my own place now, Money. My parents put up the 10% security. And when I keep up my repayments, they get it back with interest in 5 years from Barclays. And now we can do whatever we want. Right, Dave? We don't have to tiptoe up the stairs. I can paint the living room purple. Don't look at me like that, Money. It's my house. Barclays Family Springboard Mortgage. Make money work for you.
Your home may be repossessed if mortgage payments are missed. Deposit returned with interest after 5 years if no repayments missed. Subject to application, financial circumstances and borrowing history. T's and C's apply.
Good morning, this is your Southern service to London Victoria. Join in our onboard quiz. Here's our next clue. What C sounds like a handheld party food but keeps you dry and protected from the rain? Not canapes, canopies.
At Southern Railway, we're investing over £7 million into making improvements for you, like canopies, cycle parking and new platform lighting across more of our stations. Find out more and book your tickets at southernrailway.com. Southern Railway. We're with you.
Headlines and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm Karen Moscow. It is 8:17 on Wall Street. Futures are higher this morning. We go to the First Word breaking news desk for today's morning call. Here's Bill Maloney. Bill, good morning.
And good morning, Karen. U.S. futures are holding steady since the last time we spoke, with Dow futures up 80 points. S&P's gained 9, while NASDAQ futures climb by 45. The U.S. 10-year yield at 1.56%. Gold trading higher by 6 points. And Shanghai fell 0.3% overnight, while European markets are also trading higher, led by gains in Italy and the U.K. Back in the U.S. on the economic front at 8:30, the producer price index as well as housing starts. And at 2 o'clock, the minutes from the FOMC. Regarding earnings this morning, Garmin 2020 EPS view beat estimates, and Analog Devices Q1 adjusted EPS also beat estimates. In deal news, Coty's beauty unit, which may fetch $8 billion, is set to draw buyout interest. And in other news, Tesla's up 7% in the pre-market as Piper raised its price target to a street high, $9.28 a share. Wrapping things up, NVIDIA raised to outperform at Bernstein, and Adobe's price target raised to a street high $4.30 over at UBS. Live from the First Breaking News Desk, I'm Bill Maloney. Karen?
All right, Bill, thank you. And to hear live breaking news over your Bloomberg, type squawk on your terminal, SQUAWK. And that's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Tom, John, and Lisa.
Karen, thanks so much. Appreciate that. Futures up 9, Dow futures up 80. This is going to be fun because SocGen, Société Générale, the great derivatives house of Paris, always has a sophisticated note, and they've been pretty cautious on global GDP and U.S. GDP. Sophie Wynn with us doing multi-asset, and Sophie has the word in her report, John.
What is it? Transitory?
No, not even existential. No, not even zeitgeist. GOLD. We have a major house here talking gold. Sophie Wynn, how do you put gold in the mix here in your asset strategy?
Good morning. So from an asset allocation standpoint, we think that at this point having a balanced portfolio makes sense. But having decent portfolio protection through treasuries and gold makes sense. So gold is really one of the best portfolio protection that you could have in your asset allocation.
Well, I don't want to go to 1/10 of a decimal point, but give me a percentage in gold right here at 1,600.
We don't have a target on it, but I guess that when you look at how gold and US dollar have decorrelated in recent weeks, it really allows you to understand that barbell portfolios at this point is really the trend for investors.
Sophie, the risk mitigating characteristics of, say, gold becoming more attractive relative to, say, treasuries?
We like both, but it's clear that having gold at this point where, from a relative basis, if you look at gold versus copper and the link with the 10-year treasuries, it's clear that gold is really a way to protect portfolio in case of risk off, which is the case right now with this black swan scenario of the coronavirus. When everyone is talking about how expensive bonds are, So it feels like gold at this point is really the best candidate.
Sophie, is it likely that gold will keep rallying in tandem with U.S. equities?
It feels like in this environment where you have some uncertainties regarding how long this coronavirus is going to last, but also, as you mentioned, our mild recession scenario that we're having with these two quarters of negative GDP, it could be a way for investors to have at the same time equities and gold in their portfolio.
Yeah, but what kind of equities? I mean, you do multi-asset strategy, which is salvaging my 401k, which is a 201k because I didn't buy Tesla when Pharaoh bought it. Sophie, what kind of equities am I comfortable with if I need to make a return to catch up with everybody else?
Yeah, very difficult question. So in the short
That's what we do. It's Wednesday difficult question day. What kind of equities do I buy?
So for now, our strategy is more. So in the short term, it feels like the U.S. dollar assets are going to benefit on this black swan scenario. But more in the long term, we continue to stay away from U.S. growth. So we don't really like U.S. tech.
What do you like?
And prefer to focus on value portions on the equity market. So basically EM equities, where the growth differential is quite attractive, but also valuation perspective, it's good, and also Japanese equities.
Sophie, thank you so much. Sophie Nguyen was Societe Generale there today with a really, John, almost controversial on Japanese equities there. I mean, I'm going to call that an outlier call.
Shall I bring you my 5 stages of diminishing bullishness?
I love this, John.
Do you like this?
Please, yes.
Number 1, you'll hear people saying it's transitory. If things get worse, you'll hear them turn to number 2, that the US is resilient. And if things get a little bit worse from there, you'll turn to number 3, which is the US is decoupling.
Yes.
And then if things get a little bit worse from there, you'll turn to number 4, which is the Fed will save us. And then the final stage of diminishing bullishness is we're doomed. That's just full capitulation. We're in stage 1. Transitory.
Okay, hold on a second. First of all, I want to say that somebody responded to you on Twitter because you put this out there. And someone responded 5 stages of bearishness. 1, trade war recession. 2, bond bubble. 3, viral pandemic. 4, China finally gets it. 5, they're all in denial. So you have these sort of dueling narratives that are just coming at each other right now. And
I actually missed that response. That was a good response.
It's a really good response.
And then people argued with me about where the Fed should be in terms of the 5 stages, but whatever.
I'm going to look here at the whatever analysis, and SPX is off 1% maybe off the high. I mean, the gloom that's out there is more than just an equity gloom. It's sort of looking at the shocks to the system like the China, the virus.
Well, there's a question that I have, which is how long can bonds and stocks rally in tandem? Chris Crisante, I thought, was really important on this, saying, look,
yes, he was.
you can be bearish and you sound smart, but you're not going to make money. And that has been the story over the past decade. And I think that this is the conundrum right now. Do you capitulate, or is that capitulation what's going to cause this whole cycle to implode on itself?
Yeah, extremely well said. And the key thing here is you've got to be in the market to play, and so many people have chosen not to be in the market. And that's, it's
what are people worried about? We talked about it a couple of weeks ago. If you de-risk, you miss the opportunity to re-risk because the market just gets away from you again. So you try and stay with it.
Is it the fundamental? Let me get up FOMC Go here, John. It's a wonderful function on the Bloomberg. March 18, April 29, June 10. In those 3 meetings, can Chairman Powell support the belief that makes this market go?
You want to know, I think that it's moving away from Chair Powell, and I think that the story is moving away from simplistic boom or bust story. I'm not going to endorse what Bridgewater Bob Prince said during necessarily Davos, but you are moving away from a more simplistic story into a structural shift, a divide in wealth gap. You're seeing some of the default rates pick up in the lower income group. You're seeing savings rate decline. You are seeing signs of weakness, but it's not necessarily going to be a broad-based implosion. That's going to be a make rich quick kind of recovery.
You mentioned the Fed meeting. I'm looking at the ECB meeting, March 12th. The pressure on the European Central Bank building. The data this Friday.
Well said.
The data this Friday going into March, I don't think anyone expects it to be pretty. That's your focus. Looking ahead in the equity market this morning. Good morning to you all. Equity futures up by around about 10 points. We bounce back on the S&P 500, positive a third of 1%. This is Bloomberg.
Why has J.D. Power ranked Commonwealth Financial Network #1 in independent advisor satisfaction among financial investment firms for the 6th straight time? We think it comes down to one thing: you. Because it's your input and feedback that keeps us focused on what's most important to you and your clients and continually pushes us to be the best we can be. Maybe that's why we receive top marks in every category of the J.D. Power 2019 Advisor Satisfaction Survey. They named us #1 in client support, #1 in firm leadership, #1 in operational support, #1 in compensation, #1 in professional development support, and #1 in technology support. Ready to partner with the best? Call Commonwealth at 866-462-3638 or visit commonwealth.com and feel the power. Member FINRA SIPC, a registered investment advisor. For 2019 J.D. Power award information, visit jdpower.com/award.
Vatsal Shah is Senior Project Engineer at Mott MacDonald, a global engineering consultancy with more than 16,000 employees. He earned his PhD at New Jersey Institute of Technology, and as an adjunct professor, is helping NJIT students explore emerging technologies.
My focus is renewable markets, emerging technologies, the idea of floating cities. What are we doing to develop that? What will happen to the in the water? Well, you're going to have waves hitting it. You're going to have solar. How are you going to develop plants? How are you going to develop vegetation and farming? That sort of thought process happens at NJIT. We actually plan out what will the city look like. How do we develop that? So in 10 years, we're actually ready to take on those challenges when we have our first development in the water. NJIT also has been doing a lot of work in self-healing materials, so taking the polymers and the new material that we have in our material sciences departments and putting them into things like concrete, things like steel, reinforcing our soil.
NJIT, New Jersey Institute of Technology. Learn more at njit.edu.
At the Bank of Santander, they've created Stan, a smart bot that can predict the future of remortgaging.
All right, Stan, will my mortgage rate go up?
1955 was the last time Newcastle won the cup.
No, and try not to mumble.
Playing, let's get ready to rumble.
Oh.
Meanwhile, at Santander, they can't predict your future, but they'll help secure it with great mortgage rates fixed for up to 10 years. See what's possible at Santander.
Early repayment charges apply. Lending subject to status and criteria. Your home may be repossessed if you do not keep up repayments on your mortgage.
It was a Sunday morning when I jumped on the tube.
And decided to pop down to Greenwich via
a large indoor jungle.
And when I got there, I was captivated by a sparkling
scary dinosaur just standing there right in front of me.
So off we went to Wembley Park
to look at the colourful fish.
Tap into the wonderful world of Off-Peak London. Travel in zones 2 to 6 for £1.50. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters. £1.50 is an adult off-peak pay-as-you-go fare for a journey not going via Zone 1 on Tube, DLR and most London Overground services. Always touch in and out with the same card or device to pay the right fare.
Good morning, this is your Southern service to London Victoria. Join in our onboard quiz. Here's our next clue. What C sounds like a handheld party food but keeps you dry and protected from the rain? Not canapes. Canopies.
At Southern Railway, we're investing over £7 million into making improvements for you, like canopies, cycle parking, and new platform lighting across more of our stations. Find out more and book your tickets at southernrailway.com. Southern Railway, we're with you.
Broadcasting live from the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers Studio in New York. Bloomberg 1130 to Washington, D.C. Bloomberg 99.1 to Boston. Bloomberg 106.1 to San Francisco. Bloomberg 960 to the country. Sirius XM Channel 119 and around the globe. The Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Surveillance.
From New York City, this is Bloomberg Surveillance for our audience worldwide. We're live on Bloomberg Radio. Equity futures up by around about 10 points on the S&P 500, positive a third of 1%. We turn to the data now, where the housing data in America has been rock solid, and you get a little bit more, I think, right now. Let's cross over to Vinny down Judice. Hey, Vinny.
Hello, Jonathan. Yes, the level elevated, down a bit, though, from the prior month. We saw a surge the prior month. This is January versus December, 1.567 thousand and an annual rate for housing starts down 3.6%. But again, the prior month up 17.7%. Economists saying a lot of that probably has to do with the warm weather. But of course, you have low mortgage rates and a buoyant labor market. We have numbers on producer prices topping forecasts up 0.5%. Core excluding food and energy up 0.5%. According to the Bloomberg News story out of Washington, 90% of the increase in final demand was due to a jump in service costs. Mortgage applications, meantime, down 6.4%. I'm Vinny Del Giudice, Bloomberg Radio. Let's go back to New York.
Vinny, thank you. Home builder sentiment near the highs of 1999, just off them at the moment. Mortgage costs, borrowing costs, 3-year lows. The home builder segment looks pretty good. Housing in America looks pretty solid at the moment.
When was the first day that the China slowdown, became
the containment efforts? I think you've got to think about the containment efforts from in and around January 20th.
I've got January 17 here off Wikipedia and Imperial College in London as well, but China's really not in this data, right?
No, but do you expect China to be in the data in housing in America? No, I'd expect that to be the last place for that to turn up.
Fair, but
I'm looking to the PMIs that come out from the United States for manufacturing this coming Friday. I'm looking at the data coming from Europe as well. This is the last place I'd expect to see it.
Europe right now seems to be a lot more important than
fragile.
The U.S. data.
Germany stagnating in Q4.
But each tea leaf out there really matters.
Japan looking ugly after a tax hike. They shot themselves in the foot, in the words of Professor Roach. The global economy is looking shaky. I think we moved, I mentioned those 5 stages of diminishing bullishness.
Did you make those up?
Yeah, we moved to resilience pretty quickly. I think as the data comes out of Europe, that's going to look soggy. The global data is going to look bad. You'll hear much more of a conversation about how resilient the U.S. economy is in the face of all of that.
You can recapitulate those in the 5 hours of the real yield seen this Friday.
That's what I'll be doing.
One on each hour.
Well, I will say, though, there is a question, especially when you saw the latest consumer debt figures and the tallies coming out with mortgage debt accounting for the biggest proportion, pushing the total over $14 trillion, which is a new record. I'm just trying to understand at what point the Federal Reserve takes this into consideration, that their policies are sort of not single-handedly, but driving the strength that we're seeing in some of the pillars of the economy right now.
Chris Rupke with us with MUFG, and this is a perfect time to talk to Mr. Rupke about the state of the American economy. And Chris, I've been remiss in not talking about the housing market. It's a lot smaller part of the economy than it used to be. Is that true?
Yeah, I guess when we look at it, we try and judge what is the essentially housing starts like we got this morning. What is that contribution to real GDP growth? And in the most recent quarter, fourth quarter, housing starts were 0.2 percentage point of 2.1% growth. So it sounds pretty small. Even during the housing bubble, back over a decade ago, it was only adding like half a percentage point to growth. So it's small, but you do get new homes come up and people go out and put furnishings in them and buy refrigerators and appliances. So, it's still an important sector. Anyway, it's sky high again for a second month in a row this morning.
Yeah, I mean, it's better economic data when we see green on the screen, higher yields out there right now. Chris Rupke, what is the partition right now of home price appreciation versus rental appreciation and that rent going into CPI? Give us an update on that.
It's pretty firm. Both the housing costs, both as measured by the PCE inflation that the Fed looks at, personal consumption expenditures, and the CPI inflation, it's running like, 3.5% for housing costs every year.
Yeah.
Which means there's no inflation out there. It's just that CPI is faster inflation because it has a bigger weight. It says housing is a bigger cost in the consumer's budget than the Fed's inflation measure. So, of course, CPI is going to run faster than the Fed's lower inflation number, the PCE inflation.
So if you take a step back, the bigger issue here is that a great proportion of Americans are renting and not owning. And a lot of this has to do with the affordability gap, whether it has to do with the down payment for the mortgages or just applying and qualifying for a mortgage given the tighter credit standards. And I'm wondering, Chris, this really goes to the heart of an ongoing angst, which is that there is a big segment of the American public that is being left behind. And I was just looking at a chart from Deutsche Bank's Torsten Slok showing that the savings rate among the bottom 90% 40% of income earners has declined for 3 straight decades. How does that factor into the overall economy that, on average, seems to be chugging along?
Well, it sounds like this is something a politician would bring up who's running for office and saying that the economy is not working for many Americans out there. But I'm not running for office. I mean,
so as an economist, how do you interpret that?
It's always the same. I don't think there's been that much change. The savings rate data are very suspect, but yeah, I mean, I assume that's essentially right, that people, who don't earn as much, I mean, they're not obviously saving as much. I don't know where to go with that. It doesn't mean there's something, it's not a situation where you pull back the tarp and the economy's half rotten based on that. There's always income inequality in America. I don't know if it's getting that much worse. Maybe a little bit because the stock market's growing more than interest rates on savings in the bank, certainly. But, I don't think that's something that could topple the economy. Dow futures don't seem to care about any of this. They were up about 80 points before housing starts and PPI inflation, and now they're up 92 points.
Chris, I'm going to jump in
day out there
because I think I agree with you. The main channel for the weakness abroad into the United States will come through the financial markets if we start to see any jitters in stocks or credit for that matter as well. The United States certainly on a trade side, manufacturing side, less exposed to the story that we see globally. The question I'm asking myself at the moment, Chris, is how forgiving we will be of weak Q1 data from places like Europe, Germany, Japan and elsewhere. Do you think we'll be in a forgiving mood?
Yeah, I'm a little surprised that the stock market's so forgiving here. I mean, there's kind of two angles here for the markets. I mean, the bond yields continue to stay quite low. They haven't retraced, even though the coronavirus supposedly isn't spreading as badly. But the stock market thinks things are pretty good. Otherwise, why do stocks keep going up here? Mm-hmm. So, I mean, at the moment, the coronavirus has put a couple of Fed rate cuts on the table this year, right? I mean, the odds of the Fed cutting rates once in the June meeting are about 55% this morning. And a second rate cut by December, we're well into 50-50 situation on a interest rate cut number 2 by December.
Would 2 rate cuts, whenever they occur, what would they do for business spirit? I mean, if money's already free, does it matter that it's freer?
Good point.
It's my only good one of the day, so go with it, Chris.
I don't think it's to a pickup in investment.
So then what does it accomplish? What does it accomplish?
Well, I think the Federal Reserve believes that by doing that, it will help put downward pressure on long-term yields. It will bring down mortgage interest rates, which will help the housing sector, and it'll help growth overall generally.
I mean, John, this is a huge...
And with a lag, get some higher inflation. But I think they're kind of running out of room to cut rates here.
I mean, John, this is a huge deal.
Have the same impact.
What Chris is talking about, this is a huge deal. And I go back to Bill Dudley's essay, where the former president of the New York Fed lays out the efficacy of what Chairman Powell's doing. And you just heard Chris Rupke say, well, maybe I'm looking at the 30-year fixed mortgage, and, down we go. The statistic I'm using, folks, is 3.69. What you need to know is we're right near the record lows of 16 and 2013 as well.
Well, financial conditions have been the focus, haven't they, over the last 18 months? And Chris, I'll ask you the question. Is that the primary focus for the Fed at the moment? So long as they see financial conditions loose, the primary market wide open in credit, equities at a decent sizable multiple, and things are okay. Are they okay? Are they comfortable with things?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I mean, the only problem I have with financial conditions, as defined originally by Fed Chairman Bernanke, was that it's really nod, wink, wink, the stock market, right? I mean, if the stock market's up, then financial conditions are better. I would just be a little bit concerned. I mean, we've been getting more stories about how if there's a change in leadership down in Washington, that the other party might want to take away that biggest corporate tax cut in history. And for me, I mean, like it or not, the corporate tax cut that we got voted in at the end of 2017, that's probably responsible for at least 20% of the value of the rise in the stock market since Trump was elected. So,
yeah, we see that with share buybacks.
Does that mean stocks fall 20%? I hope not.
We'll see. Chris Rupke, thank you so much with MUFG. Just smart there, linking fixed income, linking the yield market into our economics as well. John, one of the messages here, and Chris alluded to it, is just the resiliency of futures today. There's just a persistent lift.
The Teflon market, your next stop for the Federal Reserve, March 18th, as Tom mentioned a little bit earlier. That'll be your next Federal Reserve decision. So we'll get you some headlines, some news worldwide. We can do that from New York with Michael Barr. Good morning to you, Michael.
Good morning, John, Lisa, Tom. Coronavirus cases in China are continuing to fall as inspectors go door to door in the epicenter, Wuhan, to find every infected person. The number of people who have died from the virus is more than 2,000. Dr. Anthony Fauci is the director of the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases.
My sense, and the sense of many of my colleagues, is that the ultimate case fatality rate is what we call it, the death rate, is less than 2%. And the reason is that what is likely not getting counted is a large number of people who are either asymptomatic or minimally symptomatic.
In Japan, the much criticized quarantine of a cruise ship is ending today. With 542 cases, medical experts have called the quarantine a failure. Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders has moved out to a commanding lead in California with 32% support among likely Democratic voters in the critical Super Tuesday state, according to a poll released by the Public Policy Institute of California. Sanders also has a commanding lead in two national polls ahead of tonight's debate in Nevada. Last night, Sanders spoke at a Las Vegas town hall and was asked why it seems like the president wants to run against him.
Oh, really? That's not how I would interpret it. I think Trump understands that we have something that other candidates don't, and that we have an unprecedented grassroots movement.
President Trump's tweets about Justice Department cases is causing new tension between the White House and Attorney General William Barr. Barr is reportedly saying he is considering stepping down if the president does not back off. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg, John.
Michael Barr, great to catch up with you, sir. Looking forward to those debates. That debate in Nevada a little bit later. The focus, of course, through the day on the founder majority owner of Bloomberg LP, the parent company of Bloomberg News, Mr. Michael Bloomberg. But, guys, let's not gloss over the fact that the leader right now is Senator Sanders.
Oh,
and I just get that same feeling, Tom, back in 2016 when early in the year people just refused to believe that candidate Donald Trump could get it done and get over the finish line.
There's difference off of Iowa, where off of New Hampshire, where his vote differential this time versus 4 years ago makes it a different Bernie Sanders, but there's no question he's leading every poll.
That's the politics for a little bit later and through the year as well. Your market set up as follows. Equity futures up by around about 10, positive 1/3 of 1%. From New York this morning, good morning to you all. You're listening to Bloomberg Radio.
This is your Bloomberg Real Estate Report. I'm Denise Pellegrini. All right, if you're about to get a bonus, for example, you might consider splurging on some property.
Bonus is an appreciation for you. You should invest in something that will appreciate for yourself.
Chris Rozar is editor at Bloomberg Pursuits.
Property across the U.S., prices are just beginning to bounce back up because mortgage rates are so low. So why don't you invest in land that'll actually become more valuable over time?
And in the latest issue of Pursuits, he has a suggestion about which property to buy.
We found a great one in upstate New York, in Old Chatham, in the Hudson Valley, which is actually at 200 acres and has a working farm. So it actually can make some money for you as you're just sitting there.
But just because it's a farm, that doesn't mean it's a bargain.
This is almost a $4 million property, but it's a 1790 farmhouse. It's actually a really beautiful place, my kind of place, really old school.
And that's your Bloomberg Real Estate Report. I'm Denise Pellegrini.
Not completing high school is more of a social thing than it was an academic thing. I came out in the 11th grade. Nobody was embracing you. The kids were cruel. It was very difficult to be gay. Even though all these years have passed, I still had that longing to have my diploma. The hard part was determining that I was going to do it, but I definitely didn't do it alone.
At age 30, with the help of her mentor, Carissa finished her high school diploma.
I have a mentor, Maria. She convinced me to continue my education and to finish what I started to get my diploma. Just never judges. She's a true role model. If you're even considering getting your high school diploma, go get it. You can do it.
No one gets a diploma alone. If you're thinking of finishing your high school diploma, you have help. Find free adult education classes near you at finishyourdiploma.org. That's finishyourdiploma.org. Brought to you by the Dollar General Literacy Foundation and the Ad Council.
At the Bank of Santander, they've created Stan, a smart bot that can predict the future of remortgaging.
I'll read Stan. Will my mortgage rate go up?
1955 was the last time Newcastle won the cup.
No, and try not to mumble.
Playing, let's get ready to rumble.
Meanwhile, at Santander, they can't predict your future, but they'll help secure it with great mortgage rates fixed for up to 10 years. See what's possible at Santander.
Early repayment charges apply. Lending subject to status and criteria. Your home may be repossessed if you do not keep up repayments on your mortgage.
Teaching shapes lives. If you're considering a career in teaching, you could be eligible for a £26,000 tax-free training bursary. Find out about the financial support to help you start your career in the classroom. Teaching. Every lesson shapes a life. Search Get Into Teaching. Bursary subject to eligibility. Selected subjects only.
The S in Audi S-Line stands for many things like sporty, stylish, streamlined, and now seductively priced. Like the Audi Q2 S-Line, which you can now drive from £329 per month, £1,974 initial rental. Test drive one at your local Audi centre, but you'll have to be swift. The offer ends soon. Search Audi S-Line. Audi, Vorsprung durch Technik. With 36-month contract hire, 10,000 miles per annum, 18s and over, subject to status. Damage charges may apply. No ownership. Ordered by 31st of March 2020 from participating centres. Audi Financial Services. Visit audi.co.uk.
Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Dow U.S. new home construction pulling back from a 13-year high, but remaining elevated in January, while applications to build jumped as low mortgage rates and a robust labor market continue to fuel housing demand. Residential starts slipped 3.6% to a 1.57 million annualized rate, still the second fastest pace of the expansion. Permits, a proxy for future construction, advanced 9.2% to a 1.55 million rate, the highest since March 2007. A key measure of U.S. producer prices rising more than forecast in January, suggesting some inflationary pressures may be building. So-called core producer prices increased 1.7% in January from a year earlier. Futures this morning are on the rise after signs emerge that China may be planning further measures to support its economy as it reels from a virus-induced slowdown. We check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg. S&P futures up 11 points, Dow futures up 95, NASDAQ futures up 49, the DAX in Germany's up 0.6%. 10-year Treasury down 7/32, yield 1.58%, yield on the 2-year 1.43%. NYMEX crude oil is up 1.6% or 82 cents at 52.87 a barrel. COMEX gold up 0.2% or $2.70 at 16.0640 an ounce. The euro 1.0793 against the dollar, British pound 1.2976, and the yen 110.78. And that's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Tom and Lisa.
Hey, Karen, thanks so much. Lisa Abramowitz and Tom Keene. Thrilled to have with you someone to give frame on the equity markets right now. Futures up 11. Gina Martin Adams has been a resilient bull through thick and thin. She said you have to participate, you have to be in the market. How much cash is out there right now? I mean, is there a lot of cash build up at long-only mutual funds or at other shops? Do you get the feeling a lot of people have cash on the sidelines?
I get the feeling the retail investor has cash on the sidelines. The institutional investor has been participating for the vast majority of this cycle.
I'm sorry. What does that mean? I mean, cash on the sidelines. And this is actually a really important question.
No, it's a really good question. Let me frame that. In a prospectus presented traditional mutual fund, there's a band of 2, 3, 4, 7%, I would say, is a ton of cash. And I've seen portfolio managers quit because by mandate, they couldn't hold more cash.
But I'm wondering how much of that is being held in short-term treasuries, middle-term treasuries. How much of that cash,
some of it's a cash
ends up being a duration bet?
Well, I think most of it is money market, so it's very, very little duration bet at all. But even if you think about the long-only mutual fund universe, cash the constraints are pretty severe. Like they really can't hold more than 3 to 4% on average of the portfolio in cash anyway. So they've been participating. They haven't necessarily picked the right stocks, and that's been a struggle throughout the last decade. I'd say for the asset allocator as well, you see plenty of evidence the asset allocator has been fully invested. Where we have not seen a material shift is in the retail investor. The retail investor, if you take households in the United States and you look at their assets on their balance sheet, they have simply held their equities from 2009 to date. They have not added anything. As a matter of fact, it's net negative additions when you adjust for market cap changes in the equity market. So they have not put more money into the equity market. They've simply just held what they had. So those that were lucky enough not to sell out at the lows in 2009 have enjoyed this magnificent gain of the last 10 years.
All right.
Those that didn't, haven't.
So let's talk about the fundamentals and where we are in that cycle. Given the earnings that we've gotten so far for the fourth quarter, excluding the big five, Microsoft, Apple, Alphabet, Amazon, and Google, and this comes from John Authers, senior markets correspondent for Bloomberg, U.S. earnings were down 7.5% in the fourth quarter. Does that concern you? That comes via Societe Generale.
I don't find that to be the case, actually. I run my own earnings calculations.
All right, so what are your
if you exclude tech sector, earnings are down around a percentage point. If you exclude tech from sales, sales are still positive. So I look at the entire tech sector as a proxy. The weakest players certainly are very, very weak. Energy, industrials, materials, consumer discretionary, all still printing negative EPS growth. The rest of the market producing positive EPS growth. The entire market, if you take the percentage of companies that beat expectations, it's roughly 70% of stocks actually produced earnings growth over the course of the last year. So, I think if you take all of the earnings of tech out of the market and you can still show some degree of stability in earnings, you're in a relatively stable condition. Now, that's different than discussing price, because I do think you have severe concentration in tech right now that is a risk to the market if tech earnings start to suffer, right? That's something we need to worry about. But I don't agree that if you take out some of the biggest players, you don't have any earnings growth, because the evidence would point me to the contrary.
How do you respond to the number of voices we've heard today that suggest Q1 sort of can be traditionally written off and corporations can, quote unquote, catch up Q2, Q3, Q4 into the year?
I think that's particularly relevant this year because of coronavirus. There's an assumption that Q1 is going to be weak, and it will be weaker than expected, than it was expected at the start of the year. We've seen that through revisions. This year, it's critically important for a couple of reasons. One, you do have the coronavirus, which is suppressing first quarter earnings as we speak. We're getting the numbers coming in suggesting that's the case. But also because there was already an anticipation that earnings through the sequence of 2020 would start to reaccelerate. So if you look back at 2019, Q1 was weak, but Q2, Q3 were weaker, right? You didn't have that sort of reacceleration theme in 2019. 2020, your anticipation is that you will have a reacceleration in earnings growth. If that doesn't come to fruition, that's very troubling for the outcome for the market's price, I would suggest.
Just quickly here, overnight there was a story about how some companies, private companies in China, have stopped paying their employees because they've had production shut down. At what point does that matter in a much more significant way against this case for a V-shaped recovery?
Yeah. I think it will matter to some degree there are companies, without a doubt, there are companies with exposure to China that just have permanent losses as a result of this, right? If you were going to travel over the Lunar New Year, you're not going to rebook that trip probably till next year. So those companies have to take permanent losses. You're probably not going to go to Macau a couple more times this year as a result of not being able to go this year or earlier this year. So I do think there are some permanent losses. The shutdowns, as they go on longer and longer, do drag on growth. But the reality is China's been through H1N1. They've been through SARS. They've been through, multiple viruses over the course of the last decade. And we've learned from those experiences, and I think that's why the market is as resilient as it is. China will not be shut down forever. Yes, some companies will have permanent losses, but others will have pretty significant bounce backs when China comes back online. It is a temporary disruption, no matter how long it is. And I think that's what's being priced into the market is, yes, this is temporary. This is not a permanent change to the outlook for growth.
Well, certainly we see that on the tape this morning. Futures up 11. Gina Martin-Adams, thank you so much for running all of our equity coverage, Bloomberg Intelligence, this morning. Lisa, just yields are higher. There's no other way to put it. I mean, we had the housing data and all that PPI as well. And
the PPI data in particular, the idea that it came in with such a beat, the idea that inflation perhaps is coming in a little bit higher than expected. That's what people are not expecting, and we are seeing that continue to drive yields just a touch higher. Going forward, we're going to be talking more about the economic bleed out of the coronavirus.
Let's get this right, sir. You didn't see three men dressed as clowns take off in a van with a Renaissance painting because you were distracted by, and I quote, a sporty red compact SUV with a bold mesh grille, a sculpted bonnet with sweeping roofline on diamond-cut alloys.
And beautiful rear haunches.
So, you saw a Jaguar E-Pace. But what about the clowns?
What clowns?
Jaguar E-Pace, designed to steal attention. Search Jaguar E-Pace.
They don't chant your name when you give blood, or sing songs about you. But patients and their families will remember you forever. Because your blood can change their lives. We need more blood donors in Tooting, the West End and Edgware. Bleed for London. Join us today at blood.co.uk.
Good morning, this is your Southern service to London, Victoria. Join in our onboard quiz. Here's our next clue. What C sounds like a handheld party food but keeps you dry and protected from the rain? Not canapes, canopies.
At Southern Railway, we're investing over £7 million into making improvements for you, like canopies, cycle parking and new platform lighting across more of our stations. Find out more and book your tickets at southernrailway.com. Southern Railway, we're with you.
Major League Baseball is back. Are you ready to unlock the 2020 season with TuneIn Premium?
And this one is gone! It hits the foul pole!
Be there from day one with every single game of spring training, rivalry games, split squads, Cactus League, Grapefruit League. TuneIn Premium has it all. Then, when the pitch count starts for real, experience live and on-demand access to every game, everywhere you go, from opening day to the World Series. Don't miss out on the action. Search Premium to upgrade today.
When you're not listening to your team, take it to the end zone, the rim, or the net. Keep up with the biggest moments in sports by following TuneIn on social media.
Block, Cook into the end zone for the touchdown.
From reminders of the live top games to tips of the best sports stations and podcasts.
Welcome to Undisputed. We are live from Los Angeles. I'm Jenny Taft here with Skip Bayless.
Follow and TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to get the most out of TuneIn. The puck drops. 12 players face off to win. The suspense is pure torture, but you wouldn't miss this for the world. TuneIn brings you every minute of the NHL season. Listen live to hockey when it matters most on TuneIn.
Like what you're listening to? Want to make getting back to it easier? Use the favorite button to keep track of the stations and podcasts you love on TuneIn. Just tap or click the heart icon to add it to your favorites. Then find all your go-to audio under the Favorites tab. Pretty easy, right?
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
Ah, finally another commercial, said no one ever. Visit TuneIn.com/premium to upgrade now and get over 45 commercial-free music stations.
Right the first time.
We always talk about the losers in a trade war.
You benefit if you're just further away from China.
So that you can too.
What are the ramifications if she crumbles or doesn't crumble?
Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business, Radio.com, and iHeartRadio apps, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening. From the financial capital of the world, 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio. This is Bloomberg Surveillance Economics.
I think the U.S. is going in for a couple of years of very, very strong growth.
The deficit by early in the next decade will start to become a real problem for the markets.
Finance.
The consumer is really strong right now.
We don't realize how good times are now.
Investment.
The biggest problem that people have in investing in stocks is that they get out of the market.
It's not supposed to be easy. Anyone who finds it easy is stupid.
Bloomberg Surveillance with Tom Keene and Paul Sweeney on Bloomberg Radio.
Good morning, everyone. Paul Sweeney and Tom Keene. Thank you for being with us. Another bull market day. Futures up 11, Dow futures up 89. Yields were negative, lower yields here for a while with a nice reversal off smart housing data as well, a little bit of inflation data. The PPI, a statistic that was a big deal 20 years ago. Paul, one thing that's just fascinating within the strong dollar and the gold, the other things we talked about through the morning, is oil has been resilient here in all the global slowdown gloom. Oil's 52.95 is resilient.
It is, because if you think about it, Tom, just a few days ago, we broke below 50 down into that 49 territory. Yeah. Concerns about global GDP growth and would OPEC or OPEC Plus be able to bring in supply to support the market here? But got a little bit of a floor here.
We've had some really good equity discussions today. Chris Crisanti, I thought, was just brilliant about being in the market, and he's enthused about value. We just heard that from Gina Martin Adams as well. And I had a Paul from where you are. Is Tesla a value stock? Is it growth? Is it
this is and we'll get more from our good friend Dave Wilson, but this is a growth story. This is a cult stock, Tom. I mean, I haven't seen one of these in a long time.
Yeah,
I think about America Online way back in the day, in the early to mid 90s, when people were thinking about this thing called the internet. Something similar here.
It's a cult stock. It's very 1999. We should bring in someone that was in the cult of 44 and 3/8 and the time of that. David Wilson on the cult stock Tesla.
I'll tell you though, there's another cult stock you got to watch, Paul. Virgin Galactic. It's up 12.5% today. It's like the 8th straight game.
Is that part of Sir Richard's
Indeed
enterprise?
it is. He came public by merging with a shell company, basically, and so you've got the stock that's taking off. But turning to Tesla, the shares are up 7%. Now, Piper Sandler raised its 12-month share price estimate on the electric car maker by 27% to $928. The new target's the highest of 30 analysts in a Bloomberg survey. And guess what? Tesla's already got above that. It actually had been there in the past few weeks. As far as today's trading goes, it's up to as much as $935. So $7 higher.
And that 52-week high, remember that crazy trading a couple weeks ago, $989. Yeah. So, or $968. So we'll have to see if it retests that high.
Indeed. NVIDIA is up 2%. The chip maker has raised the equivalent of buy from hold at Sanford Bernstein. The firm raised its target price to $360. That's the highest of 33 analysts in a Bloomberg survey.
Can I just point out, Victory Lab, Alex Potter at Piper Sandler, neutral, and he went overweight like I didn't. It's something in the vicinity of 350 or 340 nice or whatever. The guy's been dead on.
Yep.
I mean, he's just killed it.
I think you just have to be. He's got to be in his name. I mean,
it's a cult.
It's a cult.
David Wilson's a cult. David, continue.
All right. Since I've already mentioned one chip maker, NVIDIA, how about another? Please. Analog Devices. It's up 6%. Earnings for the fiscal first quarter beat analyst average estimate in a Bloomberg survey. Now, second quarter forecast trail projections as the company cut its revenue estimate because of the coronavirus. We saw this movie yesterday with Walmart. The shares went up anyhow. Same thing happening with Analog Devices. Dish Network's up 2%. The satellite television company's fourth quarter profit and revenue beat projections. Now, all this put Dish in a better position to offset subscriber losses as it prepares to enter the mobile phone business. And speaking of that business, you've got Sprint up 1.5%. New York State said it won't challenge the judge's decision to allow the wireless company to be acquired by T-Mobile US. So that deal.
So we're still waiting for California, is that right?
Something like that.
Okay.
Coty's up 3%. People knowledge of the matter said the company's professional hair and nail product business has drawn interest from some of the world's largest buyout firms. They said the unit may fetch as much as $8 billion. Though you have Ally Financial down 10% in response to a deal. The online bank and auto finance company agreed to buy subprime credit card lender CardWorks for $2.65 billion. Now, Bloomberg Intelligence said the deal was, quote, puzzling because of its price, among other issues. quickies on earnings. You've got Agilent Technologies, the maker of life science equipment, down 1%. And you've got the maker of personal navigation devices, Garmin, up 9%. Next year, energy lower by 3%. It's raising $2.5 billion through sale of equity units. And Groupon, most active stock in early trading, down 31.5%. They're getting out of the business of selling goods online this year to focus on experiences, as they put it. And fourth quarter results were far below estimates.
Okay, can we just, I don't want to do like a hindsight thing, but 25 down to 5, and it's been like a JCPenney rolling train wreck down to 3.05.
Now trading at 210.
Did we all, everyone knew this was going to happen, right, Paul?
Here's my simple take on this.
Remember the interviews years ago?
Exactly, but here's my simple take on this. The one thing that the internet has not solved for yet is local advertising, local commerce, because local requires Salesforce, it requires people, and it doesn't allow you to scale like a big, not global footprint like a Facebook does. So local media, local advertising, local commerce hasn't really worked on the internet. So Groupon is the latest example. So we'll wait for the next disruptor to come, Tom. So anyway, let's switch gears a little bit.
Please.
The Customs and Border Patrol, obviously front and center with the Trump administration. They've been trying to use really cool technology in their efforts, but they've had some troubles. Let's get the latest with Cheryl Boland. She is a White House correspondent for Bloomberg Law, Bloomberg Tax, all that great stuff. Cheryl, thanks so much for joining us. So give us a sense about, when we think technology, one of the terms I hear most often is artificial intelligence. How is a Customs and Border Patrol trying to use some of the new technologies in their efforts?
That's right, and I heard you talk about analog and the internet, and this is just the latest here. The federal government and Trump's budget really has doubled spending on artificial intelligence, on quantum science, on the really cutting-edge latest technologies. And there was a new report out yesterday that really took just an amazing view of the entire federal government, all the regulatory agencies, how they're using artificial intelligence, machine learning, really cutting-edge technology to really help them do their jobs better. And a great example of that was Customs and Border Protection, which experimented for a while with iris scanning technology in airports. Really cool stuff. But got into a little trouble with that because it was a contractor-supplied technology, and the agency couldn't really explain some of the flaws in the system. And so they ended up having to switch, and now they're using facial recognition technology. Still cool stuff, but agencies, it's very important for them to be able to understand it.
I have trouble with the definition of this as AI. Is it true artificial intelligence, or are they just trying to use new technology, plain and simple?
So one of the problems with artificial intelligence is its explainability, is its opaqueness. It is true machine learning, and in talking to the authors of this study, it was so much more than just, say, a keyword search or a Google search. It really was machines making decisions, reading, and really using advanced capability.
Okay, but Cheryl, they're using the back of our eye. The iris. Where's the iris on the eye? Is that the front of the back, the sideways? The iris of the eye, whatever it is. And basically what you're saying is the technology doesn't work, right?
So this particular technology had some flaws, and the risk to the agency was that they couldn't explain why. The technology was so advanced, and the contractor did not want to reveal its proprietary technology and algorithms and methods, and so that's why Customs and Border Protection had to drop this and switch to something else. It's one of the many sort of legal risks that federal agencies are facing here with this new technology.
So Cheryl, obviously the Trump administration is pouring lots of money and resources into Customs and Border Protection and so on. What are some of the technologies that they have the highest hopes for going forward?
So the report that I looked at not only looked at customs and border protection, but the Trump administration is interested in AI across government, and they really are they're looking to double their AI funding. But there's so many great uses for it, and a lot of it has to do with enforcement and adjudication, giving out benefits. If you think about the Social Security Administration's just stacks and stacks of files, they are so backlogged.
Okay, but
having a machine go through that.
What is the usable, provable machine that is going to do this modern thing called AI? Are we back to fingerprints?
So it can be. Now, here's another example at the Securities and Exchange Commission, tracking insider trading, looking at trading patterns. They were able to develop algorithms that help.
I'll go with that. Yeah.
Humans, now you got to remember, humans are not out of the loop on this. And so it's very important to understand that AI and machine learning helps human enforcers, helps human regulators do their jobs through massive amounts of data and information.
Well, I'll go with that on insider trading. That makes a lot of sense. Cheryl Bullen, thank you so much. Greatly appreciated on AI. Now the news in New York City. Here's Michael Barr.
Thank you very much, Tom. Paul, the Democratic caucuses are Saturday in Nevada. Tonight, 6 Democrats who qualified will debate tonight in Las Vegas. Meanwhile, President Trump is holding events in the West, but staying in Vegas. On Friday, one day before the caucuses, he'll hold a big campaign rally in Las Vegas. New polls show Bernie Sanders with a commanding lead. An NBC Wall Street Journal poll shows the Vermont senator with 27%. Another national poll, an ABC Washington Post poll, shows Sanders with 32% support. Last night, former mayor of South Bend, Indiana, Pete Buttigieg, spoke at a Las Vegas town hall and took issue with President Trump and one of his high-profile supporters questioning his marriage to his husband as it relates to running for president.
The idea of the likes of Rush Limbaugh or Donald Trump lecturing anybody on family values? I'm sorry, but one thing about my marriage is it's never involved me having to send hush money to a porn star after cheating on my spouse with him or her.
Attorney General William Barr is said to have told people close to him he's considering quitting his post after President Trump wouldn't stop tweeting about Justice Department cases. Last week, Barr said Trump's tweets make it impossible for him to do his job. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg, Tom.
Michael Barr, thanks so much. Futures up 12, Dow futures up 97. Let me give you those levels. 3381 on the S&P 500, 29,308 on the Dow. The VIX comes in 0.59 points. A nice lift to the market, 14.24. Yields lower. They've now reversed off the bang-up housing data that we saw. Certainly removed from so much international. With that dollar resiliency, 99.59 on that blended DXY index. Euro, 107.92. Please stay with us worldwide. This is Bloomberg.
Life in the fast lane surely makes you lose your mind. Life in the fast lane.
Why is delivering the best client experience a top priority at BNY Mellon's Pershing? Michelle Feinstein, Director of Client Engagement, explains.
Today's investors want a financial relationship that's on demand, customized, and leverages the latest digital technology. At BNY Mellon's Pershing, helping advisory firms and broker-dealers create great experiences for their clients is our priority. Through our integrated wealth experience, we give you a high-touch service, flexible technology choices, and expert insights, so you can deliver a highly personalized experience to your clients at every step, from onboarding to wealth planning, to performance analysis and more. And because we're part of BNY Mellon, you'll benefit from more than 230 years of strength and stability. At Pershing, we're personally invested in your success.
Visit Pershing.com to learn more about Pershing's integrated wealth experience. Pershing LLC and Pershing Advisor Solutions LLC are both members of FINRA and SIPC.
Message and data rate may apply. T&C and privacy terms can be found at babbel.com/terms. Please don't text and drive.
Have you wanted to speak a new language, but you thought it'd be too hard or take too much time? Then try Babbel for free by texting EXPLORE to 64,000. In just 15 minutes a day, you'll be on your way to speaking a new language in just a few weeks. And right now, you can try Babbel for free. Babbel starts out teaching you words and phrases by matching them with pictures. You won't believe how easy the interactive program is. Soon the sentences get a little bigger, and before you know it, you're having simulated conversations voiced by native speakers. And because Babbel is crafted by language experts and uses the spaced repetition method, in just 10 to 15 minutes a day, you'll be speaking the language of your choice with real confidence. With Babbel, you can speak a language. Just text EXPLORE to 64,000 and start your first lesson in the language of your choice for free. Download the Babbel app or text EXPLORE to 64,000 and try it for free. Text EXPLORE to 64,000.
Influential.
Let's get this right, sir. You didn't see three men dressed as clowns take off in a van with a Renaissance painting because you were distracted by, and I quote, a sporty red compact SUV with a bold mesh grille, a sculpted bonnet with sweeping roofline on diamond-cut alloys.
And beautiful rear haunches.
So, you saw a Jaguar E-Pace. But what about the clowns?
What clowns?
Jaguar E-Pace, designed to steal attention. Search Jaguar E-Pace.
Whatever job you're searching for, you can find it on LinkedIn. First jobs, flexible jobs, work from home on a Friday jobs, advertising jobs, accounting jobs, HR, PR, even ER jobs, Soho jobs, Shoreditch jobs. Keep me away from the central line jobs. Banking jobs, building jobs, never ever boring jobs. Small jobs, big jobs, lunch in Borough Market jobs, or even voiceover jobs, which is how I ended up recording this ad. Search millions of jobs on LinkedIn and find one meant for you.
Build the trolley with your favourite brands for less at Asda. Mix and match across beauty products like Tresemme, Sure and Simple and get any two for only £3. Big brands, small prices. Don't compromise. Asda. Save money, live better. Selected stores and lines subject to availability. Prices range from £1.50 to £2.45.
Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm Karen Moscow, and U.S. stock index futures are advancing along with European shares after signs emerge that China may be planning further measures to support its economy as it reels from a virus-induced slowdown. We check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg. S&P futures are up 12 points. Dow futures up 100. NASDAQ futures up 57. The DAX in Germany's up 0.6%. 10-year Treasury down 430 seconds. Yield 1.57%. Yield on the 2-year 1.42%. NYMEX crude oil is up 1.4% or 75 cents at $52.80 a barrel. COMEX gold up 0.2% or $3.30 at $16.0690 an ounce. The euro is at 1.0792 against the dollar. British pound 1.2960 and the yen at 110.74. And the International Monetary Fund reiterating that it sees a rebound in global growth this year despite risks of a further spread of the coronavirus that has now killed 2010 and infected more than 75,000 people around the world. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Tom and Paul.
Karen, thanks so much. Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studios in New York, the nexus of it all. Chris Casandi was trashing on us, I say, over how gloomy we were, Paul Sweeney.
Exactly.
So it's now time to talk to someone optimistic. You do that with the gentleman, the debater from Milton Academy, Boston, Austin Goolsbee out of Chicago, always writing. And what he's just written, folks, is Goolsbee 101 on why people treasure Austin Goolsbee. It's a smart note on retail as well, an essay on retail. And Austin, what I love is in paragraph 42, you absolutely crush it by going back to my youth. 1920, we spent 38% on food, 17% on clothing, and today we spent 10% and 2.4. My quick math here, oh wise one, is we've gone from 55% down to 12% for those core costs. That's classic Goolsbee. That's a stunning shift from our grandparents.
Yeah, and look, the thing is, if you just read the newspaper headlines, you'd think that malls are closing, retail stores are closing, all because of Amazon. And so in this thing, what I just wanted to highlight to people is there are a few economic forces that actually they've been bigger as a killer of retail stores even than the internet is. And one of them is this shift away from buying stuff toward buying services, which you see in all the rich countries of the world, but especially you see in the United States. And food and clothing is one part of that.
And what you do, and Steve Levitt and the rest out in Chicago, is you do the technology overlay as well. You've had the responsibility at the White House of gaining the GDP statistic off of the technology wonder we're living. How much do we misjudge our growth because we can't measure technology like in the service sector?
That's a tough question to answer, as you know, and we've talked about it before. I think there definitely is something about consumer value and what the economists would call the consumer welfare from a bunch of free things, like we don't have to argue about who had the highest batting average in 1967. We can just go look it up for free.
Excuse me. Yastrzemski. That was a trick question. I got it right.
For you.
Continue, Austin.
For you.
Continue.
So there is value. There is consumer value that technology has unlocked that isn't well measured. I think, though, the triumphalists, maybe you'd call them, who say there hasn't been a productivity slowdown. We haven't had any slowdown. It's all just a mismeasurement problem. And if we measured it correctly, that would all go away. The data have pretty much disproven that. I got too many negatives. I was disproving the people who don't think that. But it's not that. That doesn't explain the productivity slowdown, though I do think there is a lot of consumer value that is not properly measured.
So, Austin, in your note, some of the statistics are just amazing. But 9,000 stores closed in 2019. Kind of a big number in 2018, 2017. That brings that concept to me of that in the U.S. we're still overstored. How overstored are we in the U.S., do you think?
It's 9,000 something stores, a little over 9,000 last year, the all-time record, breaking the previous all-time record of the year before, which broke the previous all-time record of the year before that. In a way, we're probably still overstored in that sense, and already we're barely into 2020. They've already announced hundreds of store closings to come for this year. But the one thing that I would remind everybody is it's also which kinds of stores. So big box stores have actually grown more than the internet has grown, and the shift of where we go and do our shopping has been another of the factors that's killing malls. So at the same time we're losing a bunch of stores, we're also expanding different kinds of stores.
It's interesting. We got some more good consumer data out today. Home building permits rise to the highest in 2007. The consumer's strong, Austin, but I guess the consumer is just, in addition to e-commerce, the consumer is just shopping differently. Is that kind of part of the story?
Yeah, I think that is part of the story, because that's the strongest part of the economy for sure, has been the consumer strength. The consumer's been very resilient, and it's tied in with the job market. The job market has been strong. Our weak spots have been related to manufacturing, to investment, and anything having to do with trade. As we've shifted toward more services, you can have good consumer numbers that still aren't that good for retail. 2, we've shifted that we buy from big box stores. And 3, the third factor that I would highlight is the rise of income inequality, that kind of the top and the bottom got bigger and the middle got smaller, has been reflected in our retail stores too. So if you look at Dollar General and the kind of the lower aimed stores, they've done well, and the luxury stores have done well, and it's that broad middle where the stores have not done well.
I mean, this is such a good conversation. We'll continue here with Professor Goolsbee. I would note, Paul, The all-in employment of Walmart and Amazon is just under 3 million employees, 2.2 million and 800,000 employees. The two combined employee ratio to JP Morgan's employees is almost 12 to 1. And it gets a squishy number. You got the cloud in there, AWS and all that. But, this is a brilliant essay by Professor Goolsbee.
Yeah, I thought the concept that, kind of the big box stores added more sales than maybe Amazon did as well, showing you that, again, Americans are shopping differently. Think about these big box stores that anchor these malls. These outdoor malls are really the strength of retail.
Surveillance correction. Yes. American League. Yes. The great, the giant, Roberto Clemente, highest average.
Jeff Foxworthy here. Now, if you've ever found yourself repeating the same thing over and over for 75 years, you might be Smokey Bear.
Only you can prevent wildfires.
That's why I'm filling in for Smokey to switch things up, because there's a lot more to say. And I should know because my grandfather was a firefighter. And one of the things he taught me is that the people that love the outdoors the most are often the ones accidentally starting wildfires, which means always BYOB. No, bring your own bucket to the campfire. And be extra careful with things like burning yard trimmings. Don't just walk away, or chances are you might be starting a wildfire. So for the love of the outdoors, go to SmokeyBear.com to learn more about wildfire prevention. Brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service, your state forester, and the Ad Council.
Why has J.D. Power ranked Commonwealth Financial Network #1 in independent advisor satisfaction among financial investment firms for the 6th straight time? We think it comes down to one thing: you. Because it's your input and feedback that keeps us focused on what's most important to you and your clients and continually pushes us to be the best we can be. Maybe that's why we receive top marks in every category of the J.D. Power 2019 Advisor Satisfaction Survey. They named us #1 in client support, #1 in firm leadership, #1 in operational support, #1 in compensation, #1 in professional development support, and #1 in technology support. Ready to partner with the best? Call Commonwealth at 866-462-3638 or visit commonwealth.com and feel the power. Member FINRA SIPC, a registered investment advisor. For 2019 J.D. Power Award information, visit jdpower.com/awards.
How do you make the most understated Range Rover even more striking? Paint it Santorini black. Fit it with privacy glass, a full leather ebony interior, then place it on 21-inch gloss black alloy wheels. The Range Rover Velar R Dynamic Black, understated, has rarely been so bold. Limited numbers available for a limited price. Search Range Rover Velar, Land Rover, above and beyond.
Limited availability while stocks last at participating UK Land Rover retailers. Check with your local retailer.
They don't chant your name when you give blood, or sing songs about you. But patients and their families will remember you forever. Because your blood can change their lives. We need more blood donors in Tooting, the West End, and Edgware. Bleed for London. Join us today at blood.co.uk.
You're listening to the sound of a Halifax customer who used to worry she wasn't saving enough, but is now saving the change every time she runs out of milk. Switch on Save the Change, and when you use your Halifax Visa debit card, we'll round up to the nearest pound and put the difference into your chosen Halifax savings account.
Good morning, this is your Southern service to London Victoria. Join in our onboard quiz. Here's our next clue. What C sounds like a handheld party food but keeps you dry and protected from the rain? Not canapes, canopies.
At Southern Railway, we're investing over £7 million into making improvements for you,
like canopies, cycle parking, and new platform lighting across more of our stations. Find out more and book your tickets at southernrailway.com. Southern Railway, we're with you.
Broadcasting live from the Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studio in New York. Bloomberg 1130 to Washington, D.C. Bloomberg 99.1 to Boston. Bloomberg 106.1 to San Francisco. Bloomberg 960 to the country. Sirius XM Channel 119 and around the globe. The Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Surveillance.
Good morning, I'm Karen Moscow, along with Tom Keene and Paul Sweeney, and the opening bell is brought to you by SEI. Asset managers don't get results that are off the charts when their solutions are off the shelf. Learn how SEI's operating platform can turn infrastructure into a competitive advantage at SEIC.com/IMS. Stocks higher at the open. The S&P 500 up 1/3% or 11 points to 3381. The Dow Jones Industrial Average up 1/3% or 105 points to 29,334. And the Nasdaq's up 0.5% or 49 points to 97.83. 10-year Treasury down 3/32, yield 1.57%, and the yield on the 2-year 1.42%. NYMEX crude oil is up 1.9% or 99 cents at 53.02 a barrel. COMEX gold up 0.2% or $2.90 at 16.0670 an ounce. The euro 1.0792 against the dollar. The yen is at 110.73. Tom and Paul.
Thanks so much. Greatly appreciate that, Karen. And before we get back to Dr. Goolsbee out in Chicago, Paul, this is the drip of corporate news, whether it's Adidas or Puma 5, 6, 7 German hours ago as well. And I guess there should be no surprise. China may sell off HNA's airline assets, and this has to be a catalyst over this massive slowdown in China.
I think so. The headline, China said to near takeover of HNA Group, the Chinese airline amid virus slump here. So this is, clear evidence how seriously the Chinese government is taking the economic impact of the coronavirus that's happening domestically and globally.
Yeah, and they've had to sell off all sorts of stakes over the years, involved Hilton Worldwide and Deutsche Bank as well were involved in those transactions. We'll have much more on that. HNA of China beleaguered, and China will do something about it. China said to near takeover of HNA. Right now, we take over some time of Austin Goolsbee. He's at the Bull School of Chicago, former chairman of the President's Council of Economic Advisor. We've been talking retail right now. Austin, I need to talk Fed policy with you, and I want you to defend William Dudley, the former Fed president of New York, who in a Bloomberg opinion piece was heated that this isn't about the blunt instrument of a balance sheet or the blunt instrument about monetary policy, that monetary policy still has an effect on the American economy. If they cut rates once, or dare say twice from here, what does that do to our listeners?
Well, you got a lot of listeners, so it probably does different things to different ones of them. I have publicly said that I'm skeptical. I still think conventional monetary policy and cutting interest rates does matter for the economy. It's just that right now it matters less than it basically has ever mattered because several of the normal channels are not working. So when you cut interest rates, normally one of the big channels is there's a pent-up stock of people who say want to refinance their homes. They've been waiting for rates to come down. And then when you cut the rates, you get a whole bunch of these people who have been sitting on the sidelines. And the same for business investment, and the same for consumer durables, buying autos and stuff like that.
Right.
The problem is we've had the rates so low for so long that anybody who was waiting to buy a new car, to do a business investment, to refinance their home, they were waiting for rates to get low enough. They already did it. So there's not any of that pent-up demand. And so that channel is less effective. And then the second is, if we were to, let's say the coronavirus got over here and people freaked out and stopped going to work, right, and we had a downturn like what they're facing in China. The normal Fed move, as you know, is to cut rates 400 to 500 basis points over a relatively short period of time. That's the kind of signature Fed move to fight off a recession. Well, you can't cut the interest rate 500 basis points when it's already too low. So I am a huge fan of Bill Dudley's. I was on the economic advisory panel to the New York Fed when he was the president of the New York Fed. And I think there is a lot of wisdom in his piece, but the part of it in which he's kind of pleading to the world, please still respect the power of our monetary policy, I think that part is maybe overstated.
So, Professor, what tools do you think the Fed should use, should it need to act to stimulate our economy at some point in the future?
Well, look, they should use the conventional monetary channel. It's just they got the shorter runway, so you're not going to be landing a 747 on it. We're gonna have to focus on the smaller planes, and I continue to think that the unconventional monetary policies, like forward guidance, like QE, like a series of things, are modestly effective, but they should certainly be in the toolkit. I think for the people who believe that those unconventional monetary policies and the balance sheet are super directive of the markets, or they're the thing that has led stocks to rise, 30% in 2019, I would like to see what data they're looking at, because my read of the data is their impact. There has been some impact, but it's been a modest impact if you actually start going and looking at the various assets.
So as we take a look at today's economy, it has been clear for some time that it has been driven in very, very large part by the consumer. How confident are you in the U.S. consumer today?
I think you're right. It's been driven by the consumer and the job market. That's the shiny part of the economy. I'm still pretty confident on them. Though the only thing is, anything that destroys consumer confidence puts our recovery at risk. That part is clear. And I will say two things that historically can wreck consumer confidence in fast order are A, massive political dysfunction and meltdown in Washington. And did I say one or A? I think I said A. B, natural disasters or infectious disease. For sure, if we got the coronavirus spreading in the U.S., I think it's hard to fathom that would not freak out consumer confidence in a short basis.
Short of an epidemic becoming a pandemic, there's $1 trillion deficit. Are you oblivious? I mean, come on. You had to sit there and explain CBO to presidents and that. I'm looking at a $1.3 trillion run rate to begin with off a plugged-in GDP number that's, maybe it works, maybe it doesn't. Is Austin Goolsbee telling me that Senator Dirksen's $1 billion here, $1 billion there, $1 trillion here, $1 trillion there doesn't matter?
It does matter. The part that's disturbing is not the $1 trillion.
What is it?
The part that's disturbing is the $1 trillion in a boom. Because if then there weren't a boom, it's going to be $2 trillion plus.
Well, no, wait. So, this is important. I don't mean to interrupt you, but I'm going to go all John Taylor on you and automatic stabilizers. If you modeled in an NBER recession, what would a $1.3 trillion deficit become? Double it?
Yeah, probably double it. It depends on how deep the recession is. So we saw the deficit exploded to record levels in the first 1 to 2 years of the Obama administration because it was the deepest recession.
Well, you had a small slowdown. Yeah, it wasn't
and
the
then,
Cubs.
as the economy comes back, the deficit gets cut in half. What we have basically never had in the United States economic history is a circumstance where we're growing and the unemployment rate is below 4%, but the deficit is exploding.
Yeah.
So I think it easily could be above $2 trillion in the event of a recession. And my thing about deficits is it's not that it's going to be a Greece-style fiscal crisis that drives the U.S. interest rate through the roof. The problem of the debt and the deficits is not that they drive up the interest rate, it's that you have to pay back the money. And so 10, 20, 30 years from now, our kids are going to be coming of age and need training. We're going to want to fund Social Security and scientific research and every other thing that the government does. And we're going to just have a bigger and bigger share of our budget is being spent on interest on the debt that we're doing right now. That's the problem.
That's the problem. What is, if I'm a bull on deficits and national debt, what's my argument for saying it doesn't really matter?
Well, it depends what the it is. The debt capacity, let's call it, of the U.S. government is vastly in excess of where the debt is now. So it doesn't matter for interest rates in the United States that we are doing this. And there is, as you know, I've been a public opponent and been blasted by the MMT people. There is one aspect that I have always said the MMT people are correct, which is by observed practice, you can spend trillions of dollars. You can increase the deficit by trillions of dollars without tanking the economy. We did it with the George W. Bush $2 trillion tax cut unpaid for, then a $2 trillion war in Iraq unpaid for, and then Trump, another $2 trillion tax cut unpaid for. Those things did not blow up the interest rate. They didn't blow up the economy. But we do have to pay back that money with interest. That's my point.
Austin, thank you so much. Very generous of you. Professor Goolsbee is at the University of Chicago. We heard green on the screen, the Dow up 89. And now, with the news in New York City, here's Michael Barr.
Tom, Paul, thank you very much. 79 more people on board the Princess cruise ship off the coast of Japan have tested positive for coronavirus. Just as many are being released from the ship. Passenger Arnold Hopland, who is also a medical doctor, says he doesn't think the quarantine has been handled correctly.
I think Japan has released many infected people into the Japanese population, and they're going to have an epidemic here in the next month. And the infection rate, this is such an infectious disease, the average infected person infects 4 more people.
The death toll from the coronavirus passed 2,000 today. The Democratic presidential candidates will debate tonight in Nevada. Mike Bloomberg joins Bernie Sanders, Pete Buttigieg, Joe Biden, Amy Klobuchar, and Elizabeth Warren in the debate. We should mention that Mike Bloomberg is the founder and majority owner of Bloomberg LP, the parent company of Bloomberg Radio. Meanwhile, Senator Warren made her presidential pitch last night to culinary union workers in Las Vegas.
The White House is a mess. And when you've got a mess and you really need it cleaned up, call a woman to get the job done.
It comes as new polls show Bernie Sanders with a commanding lead. In Manhattan, jury deliberations continue in the Harvey Weinstein trial. The disgraced Hollywood mogul has pleaded not guilty to multiple sexual assault charges. The jury asked the judge for a legal definition of the charges and for clarification on how to navigate complicated charging instructions. And later yesterday, they requested a blueprint of the movie producer's Soho apartment, the location of one of his alleged assaults back in 2006. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg Top.
Michael Barr, thanks so much. Green on the screen up 90. SPX future market up 14 points. 29,322 on the Dow. Really resilient over the last couple days. The VIX 14.29, showing that resiliency. And really, dollar, we're focused on dollar breaking out the new strength. 99.62 on DXY. Yen 110.77.
This is a Bloomberg Pursuits look at luxury. As many shopping malls in the United States struggle, downsize, even close altogether, American Dream, the 2 decades in the making mega mall, is about to open its doors to shoppers. much as riding on the $5 billion retail behemoth which sits across the river in New Jersey from Manhattan. It's employing about 17,000 people to staff 450 stores, restaurants, and amusement parks in the space of about 3 million square feet, equivalent to 50 football fields. Also in retail news, fresh off her big appearance in the Super Bowl halftime show, Jennifer Lopez is starting her own line of footwear with Designer Brands Incorporated, the owner of DSW Shoe Stores. Lopez and Designer Brands are forming a joint venture which represents a step beyond the licensing deals that celebrities are typically involved in. It means if things go well for the shoe line, J-Lo can end up owning a major stake in Designer Brands. Visit BloombergPursuits.com for more. I'm Andrew O'Day, Bloomberg Radio.
25 years ago, NJIT graduate Dick Sweeney co-founded Keurig Green Mountain, a company whose incredible innovations changed the way the world brews a cup of coffee. Today, he lectures widely on business leadership and is a strong advocate for NJIT's work to combine business education with the power of STEM.
NJIT is definitely fostering the innovative thinking for budding entrepreneurs simply because that's the world we live in. NJIT is producing students that have been trained, educated, and given the business acumen to be a contributor to a company. The distinct mission is to develop great STEM scholars. The attributes I've always looked for in team members are heart, smarts, guts, and luck. So we want people with passion, intelligence, courage, and never discount luck. The student coming out of NJIT has experienced all of that.
NJIT, New Jersey Institute of Technology. Learn more at njit.edu.
Let's get this right, sir. You didn't see three men dressed as clowns take off in a van with a Renaissance painting because you were distracted by, and I quote, a sporty red compact SUV with a bold mesh grille, a sculpted bonnet with sweeping roofline on diamond-cut alloys.
And beautiful rear haunches.
So, you saw a Jaguar E-Pace. But what about the clowns?
What clowns?
Jaguar E-Pace, designed to steal attention. Search Jaguar E-Pace.
TSB's Fix and Flex loan offers one of the best rates you can get. 2.9% APR representative fixed for up to 5 years. And the freedom to pay more whenever you want. Or even take a break if you like. Because no one can really predict what the future holds. On loans from £7,500 to £25,000. Subject to status, UK residents only, over 21. Based on de facto data, January 2020. Up to 2 repayment holidays a year, subject to approval.
Winter joggers of London, it's chilly. Your legs are caked in mud and your nose is running faster than you. Then, get that heating on. You deserve it. Thanks to Hive Active Heating, you can control your heating wherever you are with a tap of the app, which could save you up to £120 a year by never having to heat an empty home. Buy today and get a free Amazon Echo Dot. Search Hive Heating. Hive services require broadband and Wi-Fi. Terms apply.
It's headlines and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm Karen Moscow. Equities are rising on signs that China may be planning further measures to support its economy as it reels from a virus-induced slowdown and after U.S. data pointed to solid growth. Chip makers are leading the S&P 500 index higher after Bloomberg reported that China's latest moves to aid growth included possible bailouts for hard-hit industries. We check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg. The S&P 500 up 0.4% or 13 points to 3384. The Dow Jones Industrial average up 0.25% or 69 points at 29,302, and the Nasdaq's up 0.7% or 66 points to 97.99. 10-year Treasury down 3/32, yield 1.57%. The yield on the 2-year 1.42%. NYMEX crude oil's up 1.4%, up 74 cents at 52.79 a barrel. COMEX gold is up 0.3% or $4.70 at 16.0830 an ounce. The euro 1.0790 against the dollar. The yen is at 110.79. Ally Financial is down more than 10.5% after the company, the largest U.S. auto lender, pushed into the subprime credit card business with a $2.65 billion acquisition. Ally agreed to buy CardWorks, a closely held lender, in a cash and stock transaction. And we continue to watch Tesla. It's up 5.5%. Analysts at Piper Sandler have raised their price target on the stock above $900. And that's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Tom and Paul.
Karen, thanks so much. Up 80 on the Dow right now. In the Wikipedia for Charles Schwab, there's a paragraph, it's 5, 6, 8 pages down under history, and it doesn't capture what happened in 1975. Some of us lived this, and it was absolutely extraordinary how an upstart out of San Francisco and their first branch in Sacramento, California, came out and revolutionized